This certainly came out of nowhere. No, not Detroit. It was inevitable that David Cage would write and direct another movie for people to engage with. What's odd is that I'm choosing to do a video on what, as of the time I'm writing this, is his latest work. To give a bit of a background, I don't go out of my way to play what I consider interactive movies or walking simulators. I believe that these two types of... I don't really want to call them games, as they barely even qualify and they don't take advantage of what makes the medium unique, but I don't have a better word. Games are the lowest form one can be outside of, say, what was kicking around the Odyssey era.
Man, people in 1972 must have been bored out of their minds. You really gotta use your imagination, because the Odyssey doesn't have sound. And when you think about it, it doesn't have graphics either.
What makes a game such is its gameplay, and while story does play a part, this isn't a movie or book. I'm trying to avoid being mean, as I don't want to come across as some flunky who proclaims his dislike of a genre yet chooses to immerse himself in it, but man. Interactive movies and walking simulators are made by failed movie and book writers because there's such a low bar when it comes to being impressed by a story in this industry. Almost anyone can craft a narrative for a game, but presenting a unique or fun experience through blending gameplay and story is something that takes skill and is why I prefer games over movies or books. Once a designer shunts the gameplay, what's the point of making a game then? Story is important to games, otherwise we wouldn't have so many memorable moments and endearing characters, but what makes them stand out is that gameplay and story are integrated together. Let me put it this way, Devil May Cry's characters and fantastic moments wouldn't hit as hard if we didn't actively control the characters of Dante, Nero, or Virgil. This leads me to the why I haven't answered yet. Just like pushing a man down a well on a whim. Think the Eldritch Abomination masquerading itself as my girlfriend. PlayStation Plus. It was free for a month, I placed it into my library and played it, coincidentally enough, in February 2021. Happy late Black History Month, everyone. If I'm going to begin anywhere, I have to start with David Cage. Real name David DiGrutola, Cage is definitely one of the more interesting figures when it comes to the gaming world. From his start as a freelance musician, to founding Quantic Dream and being the writer-director for all their games, to his... well, I can't say fall, as the ongoing issues happening with Quantic are virtually a sham, so I'll use the phrase legal entanglement, as they have yet to be concluded. There is a lot of Cage to go through, and seeing as I don't know if I will ever cover another one of his games again, let's do a deep dive. Forewarning, some of the websites I will be using are in French. As seen by my previous videos, and possibly even this one, I can't speak other languages. English is already a hassle for me, and that's my second language, my native tongue being gibberish. If there's anything that doesn't add up, it might be because Google Translate is putting me through the runaround. Either that or I'm bad at research. To begin, David DiGrutola was born in Mulhouse, France, a subprefecture of the Haut-Rhône located near the borders of Switzerland and Germany. I'm specifying France, no duh, because that's where Cage comes from. Switzerland and Germany here because DiGrutola is not a family name you will find native to the three. Instead, the name has its roots in Italy, where David's father came from. This seems superfluous, but there's a reason for the Cage moniker. I'll get to that later though, as I first want to talk about the man's childhood. As per his words at a masterclass held in Paris, David had a very happy childhood. I didn't suffer, I didn't get beaten, nothing like that. Indeed, from a young age, that being 5, Cage was allowed to practice music, his instrument of choice being the piano, and was given many early home computers like the Auric 1 and Amstrad to play around with. I would argue that out of all the moments in Cage's life, his early years with the piano and computers is what drove him to become a developer due to the path it allowed him to take. Though from a young age he was surrounded by music, it wasn't until Cage was in his teens that he really appreciated the craft. So much so that he decided that he wanted to be a musician, adding choir singing to his growing list of skills and becoming a freelancer in Mulhouse and the surrounding areas. His work from this era was focused on TV, composing music for various different adverts and other projects. While I can't say for certain how successful Cage was in this time period, in 1993, with the money he made from freelancing, Cage set up his own studio, Totem Interactive. Having his own company not only laid a secure foundation for Cage, but opened him up to new ventures as well. Cage's first taste of the gaming industry came in the form of Super Danny for SNES, the game where he would receive his first credit under DiGrutola. This started Cage's relationship with French publisher and developer Cryo Interactive. A few of you might know them as the publisher for From Dusk Till Dawn the game, or their collaborations with Virgin Interactive for Dune on MS-DOS, or CD Projekt, Black Moon Chronicles. If you're wondering, as I want to keep my focus on David, Cryo is no longer a company due to poor game sales. The next game he would work as a composer for with Cryo would be Cheese Catastrophe starring Speedy Gonzalez, where he would once again use his real name of D. Grutola. A name that caused a bit of issue for Cage, as he explains in the masterclass. In that era, I started picking up my phone to call English or American publishers. I would say to them, "So, I'd like an appointment," and I'd begin by saying, "Hello, my name is David D. Grutola," and generally, they replied, "Bless you." Scrambling for a name that could easily be pronounced by English speakers and Westerners, David settled on the name Cage to somewhat mixed results starting out. People were either asking him if he was a vampire or was drinking himself to death. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as he only came up with the moniker after his totem stint. Cage's time creating the music for Speedy was the moment I mentioned earlier when I said his career path placed him onto the fast track to games development. Music was recorded differently back then from how it is today, as a composer had to program their scores into the console's sound chip. I bring this up because this is what Cage had to do. I have a vivid memory of Remy Herblot giving me a Sega Genesis with some sort of printed circuit board attached to it, which was the dev kit thingy they cobbled together. He told me, "There it is. That's what you're making music with." And I'm like, "But, how am I supposed to do it?" He told me, "It's not hard. There's an FM synthesizer, you program your sound, then you program your sequences, and that's it." Following his work on Speedy, Cage would be asked to work on Time Cop in '95 for the SNES and Hardline in '97 for the Genesis. With a steady line of work, Cage had the good life, but deep down inside, he wanted more. Cage had a hobby of writing and being, in his own words, an early fan of games. His dream was to write the type of game he wanted to play. An idea he came up with in '94 went a little something like this. "I just have to create a city. The other guys," assuming other developers, "are stupid. Why do they not do it? I just have to create a city, then there will be a crowd and it'll be science fiction and you'll be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want, and you'll be able to enter all buildings and there'd be vehicles outside and you can fight." And what Cage had in mind was Omikron, the Nomad Soul. With a 200-paged behemoth of a script, Cage shopped it around to his various contacts within the music industry. No one believed that it could be done. Hindsight says that they were right, but the more times Cage was told no, the more he fought for his idea to become real. He wasn't alone either. A number of Cage's friends wanted to see this pipe dream become a reality. Hiring them, Cage and his ragtag team settled into a sound booth turned office for a grueling 6-month crunch to produce a demo. That's how much money Cage had for the project, and if the 6 months passed without the demo being picked up, Cage would have to return to music, a disgrace. Quick side note, even though his team was made up of his friends, Cage didn't let that get in the way of ordering them around. In an article from Edge magazine, it describes that Cage insisted on paying the team, not for altruistic reasons, but so that he could be the boss. A quote from Cage in that same article even reads, "I wanted to be able to demand something of them, ask them to be there on time in the morning, and work long days." The very last week, and having run out of money to pay his team and publishers to sign up with, Cage attempted a Hail Mary and visited London to make contact with Eidos. Eidos was making fuck you money at the time, having just released Tomb Raider 2, so if Cage could secure a deal, all of his troubles would be gone. Roaming the streets of London with a large computer on his person, it housing the demo of Omikron, Cage was smiled upon by Lady Luck as the publisher took an interest to his project and called him in to see what he had. Amazed by what they saw, Eidos immediately gave Cage and his team a contract, formally establishing Quantic Dream. Being a bit of a jokester, Cage did pull a fast one on his friends when he returned back to France. He walked out of the train with a very sad face. A very sad face. I couldn't resist, and it was really hard to look sad because the whole journey back I had a massive smile on my face. I had to really concentrate to look upset. When I got off the train and walked up to the team, and they were so anxious, I could see they were, so I said, "Here's the contract to develop our first game." They all went crazy. This was in spite of the fact that the new developer had to start making the Nomad Soul in a month's time. To skim over the details, as this isn't the history of Omikron, Quantic Dream had about 2 years to complete Nomad Soul, and it was pretty rough. Cage, on the merit that Omikron was his baby, was thrust directly into the director position with no previous skills to rely upon.
I didn't have the experience to direct a project as complex as that one. My team was talented but not easygoing, so I spent a lot of time struggling to make the team advance, doing psychology and things I now completely refuse to do because it's already complicated enough to make a game, and it was exhausting. I slept under my desk 2 to 4 days in a row because we had to finish stuff. It was very difficult. I spent weeks without going home, and the people of the team too. It wasn't just me, of course. It was very hard, physically, mentally. The relationship with Eidos was complicated at that time.
Possibly the most well-known aspect of the game, besides it being an ambitious and confusing mess, was that Ziggy Stardust himself, David Bowie, would both create the soundtrack and also star as a character. This inclusion was also the reason why it became free for a week after his passing. At the end of that lengthy citation, Cage mentions that the relationship between Quantic Dream and Eidos had soured. The cause? Poor sales plaguing Omikron. Cage has gone on record by saying that the reasons for why Nomad Soul didn't get picked up in the States was because of lackluster marketing from Eidos, probably the actual reason, as it sold around 400,000 to 500,000 in Europe, which wasn't outstanding at the time compared to the 100,000 in America, and that the gaming industry as a whole didn't allow for Omikron to succeed. Borrowing another banger from the Cage off of MCV UK,
the problem is that we are in a very conservative industry. Every time you come to marketing departments with very simple concepts, like the hero has 10 weapons and goes through 20 levels, and there's a snow level and a jungle level and a sand level and a whatever level, and it's gonna be great because I can display more explosions on screen than any other game, and then they have it. The marketing departments go,
"Oh, that's really interesting."
When you come to them about a game based on a story or a game based on child abduction, they think,
"Dear God."
It's very difficult for them to commit to anything that's remotely different.
To completely destroy his point on the industry's supposed conservatism, here's a list of games released in and around 1999. Silent Hill 1, Planescape Torment, Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, Shin Megami Tensei Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment, Driver, Metal Gear Solid, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey and Exodus, System Shock 2, Grim Fandango, Deus Ex, which had the same publisher as Omikron, Fallout, Shenmue, Parasite Eve 1 and 2, Hitman Codename 47, American McGee's Alice, and Blade Runner. For Cage to say his game was held back for attempting to break the mold is a fucking joke. Newsflash, Omikron was an under-budgeted, overblown hodgepodge of unfocused concepts that needed more time in the oven. I realize I don't have to say that to you. I'm pretty sure a majority of us have seen the suffer through by the best friends, but if you want additional material, watch SGF Bumblefruit, as I think it serves as a nice companion piece to the suffering.
So even though the game is incredibly rough, it's like completely unpolished. Oh, and that's it. That we ended it. It's done. Even though it's just completely unpolished, I enjoyed it actually. I mean, there were certainly really bad parts, primarily the first-person segments.
The only consultation I can give to Cage and Omikron is that the budget wasn't big enough for the game, as it is obvious that some parts of Nomad aren't complete. Right after shipping Omikron out, Eidos approached Quantic and Cage with another deadline. Christmas of 2000. 10 months to create a sequel to Omikron. A feat that would be difficult and unfair for even a large developer at the time, and Quantic had only just formed and was relatively small. Unafraid of speaking his opinion, Cage brought up that the 10 months' time
won't even be enough for me to write it, let alone make it.
Thinking quickly, Cage thought out to make episodic stories to deal with the tight due date, but the damage was already done. Relations with Eidos had boiled over. Quantic had no publisher, effectively putting the developer back to square one, and I mean that because there were quite a few departures from the team and Quantic was almost shut down. The only precautions that kept them afloat was Cage's dedication to his writing, as he was already constructing a 2,000-page Leviathan after Omikron's release, and having an American office that dealt with mocap, allowing Quantic to branch out into movie production, their one film credit being the box office bomb Immortal. Luckily for Cage and his crew, there was a publisher interested in Cage's new manuscript. Vivendi Games. Cage specifically brings up a man by the name of Christophe Rambo, who from my research held not only a lot of hats during his time with the publisher, but was also the international president. Apparently he treated Cage and Quantic Dream well, as in the masterclass, Cage frankly states that Rambo had a passion for what we did, he completely believed in it. He helped us, supported us, and signed for the project. However, Vivendi was going for a restructuring and was split into 3 divisions: Europe, Asia Pacific, and North America. Though Rambo had helped sign Cage and Quantic to a new deal, the reshuffle of Vivendi ended up taking his job and the jobs of 900 other employees. Both a game industry article, the one that I used to get the 900, and Cage himself in the masterclass note that the game's development branch of Vivendi was essentially defunct. Christophe was also only one person, as even though he and a few higher-ups took a liking to the 2,000-page design doc, the remaining Vivendi staff that was left after the shakeup and the new blood were unwilling to give what was basically a passion project a significant budget. Alone and deemed not important, Cage and Quantic escaped Vivendi by finding a new publisher in the form of Atari. Or, if you've been keeping up with me from the beginning, Infogrames wearing the skin of Atari.
This is about much more than just business. This is about the thrill of wearing another man's skin, feeling his innermost wants and desires, and being in control of his every single move. That's how you get off.
Giving Quantic a large allocation of funds, allowing them to have an 80-person team and put to full use their mocap division, work began on Fahrenheit. The game that would become known as Indigo Prophecy in America was created because of 2 reactions that Cage had. His realization that not everyone would latch onto Omikron due to its setting, and Cage's own view on games. The earlier quote from MCV UK does apply here, as Cage was expressing his annoyance over the name changes to Nomad and Fahrenheit, but there is a selection from Eurogamer that sums up succinctly why Cage wrote Fahrenheit.
I was also generally frustrated with narrative in games. Most games seem to target 10-year-old kids. When you think about the topics, the characters, or the stories told in some games, there is no possible doubt about the fact that they are aiming for young kids. But when you look at game demographics, you realize the average age of gamers is 29 years old. It became obvious that this industry was not making games for its demographics, but only for the youngest part of it. Another reason is clearly that no one cares about stories. No one has yet understood in this industry the power of a good story and good characters. When you talk to some publishers, they answer that what is important is not what characters are, but what they can do. This is absolutely wrong. The experience is a million times more intense if you care for the characters and if you know why you are doing something. My thinking about narrative also included the game language. In many games, this language is only limited to a few words. Fear, anger, frustration, power. When you think about movies or books, you realize that their vocabulary is infinite. They can make you go through all human emotions. So why should games limit themselves only to a couple of words? Oh boy.
To start with the first section of the quote, he said this in 2005, the year of Resident Evil 4, Kingdom Hearts 2, Devil May Cry 3, Stranger's Wrath, Republic Commando, Doom 3, Haunting Ground, Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, Conquer Live and Reloaded, Ninja Gaiden Black, a plethora of Tom Clancy games, both Rainbow Six and Splinter Cell, Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, God of War 1, Geist, Trauma Center Under the Knife, and a little-known game called Killer fucking 7. Even funnier, Persona 3 Base would be released in Japan and Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence in America the following year. Where the fuck does David Cage get off by saying that there were no games for the adult demographic? Also, who cares if there are games made for kids? There are books, TV shows, and movies made for the same demographic. It's called a target market for a reason. I wouldn't read a bunch of young adult novels then claim that writers aren't writing for 30 to 40-year-olds. Moving on to the second section. What? It's like Cage forgets that a game's story is woven into its gameplay. My reaction to the character of James Sutherland wouldn't be as great if I wasn't controlling him in such a direct manner. I wouldn't dictate that movies would be better if there was no picture or sound, as that is completely removing what makes a film a film. And I don't have to comment on the no good stories or characters part, as that is just blatantly wrong. Insert me holding back tears during Persona 3's ending. Likewise, Cage's breaking down of game language falls apart when you realize that he's just looking at games like they're Skinner boxes. Taken from the archived Fahrenheit website, Cage describes all games as being under
the same 5 basic emotions: excitement, competition, fear, frustration, and pride. In short, excitement is about the pleasure of displaying power by killing or destroying, like in any shooter game. Competition is about showing that we are better than the others, like in sports games or any game with competitors. Frustration is about failing and starting again, and pride is about getting unique items and customizing one's character. These primitive emotions are based on two neurotransmitters, adrenaline and dopamine. Both are known for their physical effects on the body, and in the case of dopamine, for its addicting power.
Imagine being so much of a muppet to say that a game such as Haunting Ground, which effectively uses ideas of sexual violence to make players care about Fiona and her plight, and Digital Devil Saga, a game heavily based on Hindu concepts, are the same because of an arbitrary set of emotions. I could come up with 5 different emotions, then apply them all to books or movies, but I won't because I ain't a gobshite, and that's completely reductive. This last point leads into David Cage's design philosophy, both as a whole and when making Fahrenheit.
I wanted to create a game that anyone could easily enjoy, that would not be based on the mastering of controls, but on involvement.
To simplify that statement, Cage wanted to make a game and to make games that were accessible to people who don't have video games as a hobby. On one hand, I can applaud that statement. It's a truly noble goal, and it's something I can relate to as it's part of the reason why I do these videos. I want people to take interest in the things I do. I wouldn't have done a 2-hour video on Saya or continue to reference it in my videos if I didn't A, have a complete interest in it, and B, want other people to read it. However, where Cage stumbles is that he tries to make his games emulate movies to attract what I will call the outsider crowd. I said his goal was noble, and it is, but it's also a fool's errand. People who don't play video games won't start playing them because of a David Cage joint. Hell, people who don't play games won't start playing them even if you show them the best in the world. It's because there isn't an initial interest. Take me, for example. I don't care for cycling. If someone made an automated bike for people who don't like cycling, I'd be kinda intrigued, but I wouldn't get into cycling as it isn't a hobby I take stock in. Trying to market to people who don't have an initial interest is a dumb idea because you are essentially hoping that their one interaction would push them into the hobby. Using a modern example, it's like when Marvel started marketing comics to people who don't read them. There's nothing wrong with not getting a hobby, however. For every one me that doesn't like cycling, there are dozens of others who live, breathe, and die for it. I don't like puzzle games, but that doesn't mean the genre shouldn't exist or be molded into a lesser form to attract people like me who don't play them. Again, this leads me back to the issue of removing gameplay from a game. Cage is attempting to grasp at this outsider crowd with what amounts to a watered-down experience. Looking at Fahrenheit or even his later games, as Uruk Salad Bar has an excellent video in Beyond Two Souls, and I apologize if bits of this history sound like his video, as a movie or book, there are a lot of issues with the writing such as poor characterization or laughable moments. With Indigo, Cage wanted this serious story but then injects moments that I can only describe as akin to a fever dream. Supernatural powers coming out of nowhere, Matrix-style kung fu fistfights, and loving necrophilia. Like, seriously, I don't know how to describe Lucas and Carla's relationship, as both are blandly written protagonists that have no chemistry with each other, but we are supposed to see their sex scene as romantic. I have more chemistry with Zombina, and she's bloody fictional. Pull the story down as a whole and make it harder for the outsider crowd to get involved with games. Putting so much weight onto the story without the protective shield of gameplay means the faults that exist are heightened even more, and with all the eggs in the story basket, people are right to compare a type of game such as Fahrenheit to a movie and wonder why they didn't just watch one, as it would provide a much better experience. Doing the opposite, looking at Fahrenheit as if it was a game, is completely impossible, as what gameplay elements are there to speak of? Yes, you do have the Simon Says QTE moments in Indigo, but can I really call that gameplay? Omikron had gameplay, as slapdashed as it was, but for me to say that Indigo Prophecy has gameplay would be like me admitting that Walking Around in Edith Finch is gameplay. You want a game where walking around is purposeful? Play Pathologic, which does everything an interactive movie and walking simulator do, but it doesn't forget that it's a game.
I don't know. I guess I'm just disappointed that the Games Are Art crowd seems so obsessed with those walking simulators where you don't have a ton of interactivity or mechanics. Then you have this game that did an excellent job at refining a concept that they had 10 years ago, and it's being dismissed for not being one of those walking games. Maybe we should think about why these mechanics are still there and not dismiss it as a mistake.
Indigo is this perfect storm, as it neither appeals to the outsider crowd due to its less than stellar writing, nor to the people who play games as where's the gameplay? This just makes me more shocked though, as Indigo did review well, thus leading to my statement in the opener proclaiming that there is such a low bar for being impressed by the writing of a video game. This may be the last time I do this, but released in 2001 was Silent Hill 2, and in 2004 was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. On the Metacritic score, Fahrenheit scored equally as high as those two games. I propose the letter Y. As if stuck in a bad loop, the marketing for Fahrenheit was just as poor as Omikron, InfoWari repeatedly getting into arguments with Cage as he believed that the interactive drama would be their golden ticket. You probably heard me use the title Indigo Prophecy, which is what Fahrenheit was named in the American market. That was because of InfoWari, as they thought people would mistake the game for Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 9/11. Despite Cage describing the name as a fucking stupid name, it still held the same prevalence as the original title did, as Fahrenheit was a reference to the dropping temperature happening in the story, while Indigo Prophecy was one to the Indigo Child and the prophecy connected to the figure. Unlike with Omikron, Indigo did sell well, reaching 1 million copies, but because there was little investment put into the marketing, Cage believes that the sales were only a slice of potential. Again, he cast blame two ways. Towards InfoWari for their lack of trust in Fahrenheit, and American games marketing as a whole for thinking that the only games America wanted were ones with guns. No joke, Cage thinks that the American games market views their audience as gun-loving rednecks. If I wasn't doing this analysis into the state of being called David Cage, it'd be the moment after the release of Fahrenheit where I'd begin, as while the days after the release of Indigo was the genesis of Heavy Rain, Cage even saying that Fahrenheit was the rough draft of Heavy Rain, it also marked Quantic Dream's relationship with Sony. Indigo Prophecy had caught the attention of the conglomerate due to its... well, I don't know why, because it falls on its face so hard around the halfway point and never recovers, and the whole choice-based system in the game was a lie, as the only choice you are given in the game that matters is what you do at the ending, and even then it's tied to a QTE section, but they were impressed with Quantic's new release. In fact, a few representatives from the company rang up David Cage to see if they could work out a deal for the upcoming PlayStation 3 showcase that would be happening at E3 2005. That wasn't the embarrassing one, it's the 2006 conference where Giant Enemy Crab and $599 come from. Cage had busied himself with his writing following Fahrenheit, coming up with two ideas, a short film by the name of The Casting and another 2,000-page mammoth by the name of Heavy Rain. Thinking that if he impressed the company, his team would be under Sony for Heavy Rain, Cage shone a spotlight on The Casting, piquing the interest of the representatives to the point that Sony gave Quantic a deadline of 5 months, January to May, and access to the early dev kits for the PS Triple. Surprisingly, Quantic managed to ship The Casting out on time, and when it got to the ground floor booths for the burgeoning console at E3, it was a hit. Phil Harrison, Michael Denny, and Ken Kutaragi, the father of the PlayStation himself and then president of Sony Computer Entertainment, were all impressed. Due to the success of The Casting, Sony asked if Quantic had any new plans, allowing Cage to bring up Heavy Rain, securing a publisher for it. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time on Heavy Rain, as why Cage wrote it was to basically rectify the issues with Fahrenheit. He wanted a more down-to-earth story and even based the beginning scenario of Rain on an incident that happened to him. When Cage was at the mall with his wife and son, he briefly lost track of his child, which made Cage reflect on what he would have done if something bad ever happened to his kid. Thus the tagline for the game, how far are you prepared to go to save someone you love? It's also around this point that Cage started implementing his no game overs part of his philosophy, as while he disliked his narrative games having failure states, Heavy Rain was the first one to not have standardized game overs. Instead, if a character died in Heavy Rain, the plot would continue moving forward with their scenes being left out. Of course, Heavy Rain bases itself in the choice-based decision-making style that Fahrenheit did, and like with its predecessor, it's more the illusion than anything else. On a gameplay front, it didn't matter if the player engaged with Heavy Rain or not, its story would keep trucking on towards some form of a conclusion. This would be way more prominent in Beyond Two Souls. To say that Heavy Rain was a success would be undercutting it. It won 3 BAFTA awards, among others, and was nominated for a whole heap of award categories. David Cage even said that Heavy Rain is the result of those 15 years of fighting and struggling with this new language, to an interviewer in relation to his career after receiving the BAFTA awards. In that same interview, he does mention that Quantic Dream was working on a new title that would go into a wildly different direction from Heavy Rain, but it would still be dark and aimed for adults. While the game Cage is hinting at would be Beyond Two Souls, Quantic had another tech demo on their plate between the releases of Rain and Souls. Kara. If you are wondering, this is the start for Detroit Become Human. The sales of Heavy Rain were astronomical, measuring around 5.3 million. Sony would have been a chump if they didn't sign Quantic to a new deal, so they did with the stipulations being the 2 projects I mentioned earlier. Kara and Souls. To be honest, this will probably be the shortest section of the history, as the whole reason why Kara was created was so that Quantic could flex their new mocap techniques that would be used on the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 software. There are a multitude of inspirations for Kara, such as Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near, and the main actress for Kara, Valerie Curry, would return to be the character in Detroit, but Kara at this point in time was just a tech demo. That's because Cage was working on what would technically be his first disaster: Beyond Two Souls. Given a $27 million budget, Cage tried his best to make this new project the closest to a movie one of Quantic's games could ever be, hiring well-known actors like the former Ellen Page, who goes by Elliot Page nowadays, but I'm using the old name for a reason, as this game's controversy is tied to Elliot's time as Ellen, and Willem Dafoe, while also implementing the new techniques learned from Kara. Like before, the script was 2,000 pages, a detriment to the game as a whole alongside its bizarre structure. To be frank, there's nothing interesting about Beyond's development besides 3 factors. It was shown at the Tribeca Film Festival, its connection to the game overs are a failure of the game designer's statement, and the fact that there exists a nude model of then Ellen Page's character Jodie within the game. I bet a lot of you have heard that quote.
By the way, to everyone who keeps asking, why do you guys keep saying that? It's because David Cage put out that bullshit article like 2 weeks before we started this, saying game overs are the failure of the game designer.
But that is a sentence without context. The full background for the Game of Sutra quote goes as follows. Discussing game over scenarios, Cage said, "It's like creating an artificial loop saying, you didn't play the game I wanted you to play, so now you're punished and you're going to come back and play it again until you do what I want you to do." Cage continued, "In an action game, I get that. Why not? It's all about skills. But in a story-driven experience, it doesn't make any sense." Now, you can still get angry at that quote, as it basically reduces the player's role within a game, as in Beyond, you can't fail. Sure, Jodie will be roughed up or put on a separate story path, but her life of needless pain will continue no matter what you do.
Alright, controller down.
Really?
Get me.
Where do they come from?
I don't know. Where's this flashlight?
Oh!
What?
Did you just... What the fuck?
They're getting too close, so I fall backwards. This is so funny! Oh my god, I'm not doing anything!
This is so...
The closer they get, the more I fall backwards away from them. Ah!
My
Slowly
god.
making it away.
This is so
One
fucking
stumble
stupid.
at a time. Oh my god. Thank you, David
Oh my...
Cage.
This is so
Thank
fucking
you so much.
stupid.
This is so funny.
What, are you gonna stumble all the way through the river?
Please.
Oh!
Yes! Oh my god!
You just do it. It does it for you. No, yeah.
I know, exactly. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I'm putting my controller down too. I don't know why I'm holding it. Oh my god, this is so stupid. This is actually the most retarded thing ever.
She's so high. They don't really come any closer now.
Ulrich said it best that the controller is more like a remote for a TV or Blu-ray when playing Beyond. Oh yeah, the other part. Page didn't consent to a full body scan for his character at the time, yet that didn't stop Quantic's modelers from creating a fully nude render of Jodie. Though not seen in normal gameplay, accessing the game in debug mode allows the player to see the nude model used for the showering scenes. A bit of a back and forth happened with Jeffrey Abrams, Elliot's lawyer, Leah Weil, the general counsel of Sony Pictures Entertainment, and SCEA's chief legal counsel Riley Russell to not much consequence besides some websites taking down images of Jodie's model. I'll leave Beyond with an excerpt from the masterclass where the interviewer asks how David Cage got the then Ellen to be a part of the project. "The simplest way in the world. We sent her a script, we sent her a copy of Heavy Rain, we sent her a press review of what people thought about Heavy Rain, and a love letter. For pity's sake, please accept, it's the role. It's a role for you. What I often explain is that when I start writing, I often collect pictures on the net. Pictures of actors. And one of the first pictures I took out to represent to myself the character of Jodie Halves is a picture of Ellen. And this picture accompanied me, and I found other pictures of Ellen, so after 1 year, I ended up with a script where Ellen was everywhere.
So actually, when we thought, okay, who could play Jodie Holmes? Ellen Page! So we called her and we met her. It was a real meeting and a real collaboration the way I like them, which means based on passion and the desire to make something together. Selling not as well as Heavy Rain but still reaching the millions, Beyond was ravaged for its poor story, the presentation a definite smokescreen to distract from how baffling it was. But the damage had already been done. 1 million copies worldwide had been shipped out during its initial release. Thus begins the tale of Detroit Become Human. The first number I'm going to bring up in correlation to Detroit is 4 years. That's how long the development cycle took. Mirroring the previous games I've talked about, work on Detroit began as soon as Beyond was released, that being late 2013, early 2014. Well, in all actuality, what I just said was a misnomer, as Detroit began with Kara. I know I've briefly mentioned that demo, but now I'll go into it a bit. The short story follows an android learning about its sapience while on an assembly line. Despite being told that she is inferior, the android, eponymously named Kara, leaves the factory to discover what it means to be human. Originally, Cage and Quantic created the demo as a showcase for PlayStation's new engine. Off a Polygon interview, Cage and Quantic wanted to do what Avatar did by having one full performance where they capture everything at the same time. However, there was always one thought that stayed with Cage regarding the demo, even when he started working on Beyond. What happened to Kara when she left the factory? Deciding that there needed to be an answer to that question, Cage, as he always does, went to his writing, producing what is probably the longest script he has ever crafted. Shoutouts to the word probably, as while the Wikipedia page for Detroit mentions the script was between 2,000 to 3,000 pages, the article that is cited for that line only says 2,000. As with Kara, Cage's script would be inspired by Kurzweil's novel The Singularity is Near, also known as Humanity 2.0. To save a bit of time, Kurzweil's book is about the future of technology and how machines will overtake and merge with humanity. While it is based in a sort of, I want to say, sensible fear of technology, it definitely comes across as the equivalent of a man on the corner yelling about the end times, just with more tech priests. Still, David Cage does seem to believe in the book, saying to Games Radar that I was inspired by a book by Ray Kurzweil called Humanity 2.0, where he explains that human intelligence grows very slowly. We're not much more intelligent than 200 years ago. But machines, if you look at the curve of how they progress and learn, it's crazy. Who knows if one day they will have emotions? We may be in this strange situation, like in Detroit, where we'll have machines that look exactly like us, are more intelligent than us, and maybe feel emotion. How will we deal with them? In this same interview, however, David Cage does purport that the film Ex Machina was very inspired by Kara. Congruent to Cage writing the 2,000 to 3,000 page monstrosity that would Become Human, he and Quantic Dream would explore around the city of Detroit to get a good feel for the story's location. This would be the first time in any of Cage's games where a real-life location would serve as the backdrop, as though the team did go to Philadelphia for Heavy Rain. The city that appears in that game is unnamed. When asked about his choice, Cage explains in an interview with GameSpot that the history of the capital is why he chose it. It was an industrial giant in the 20th century, and then it went through very hard times, and now it's trying to be reborn again somehow. This idea of being very high and losing everything and coming back is so strong, and it's such a human story. This interview also brings up the issue of race, which would be a huge proponent in Become Human, a neo-noir thriller where subjugated androids gain sentience and decide whether to violently or peacefully rebel against their human masters. The world became aware of Detroit's existence on October 27, 2015 at the Sony press conference during Paris Games Week. All that was shown off was a trailer detailing the world of Detroit and the relations between humans and androids. Around this time, the script had yet to be finished, so Detroit was merely a €3 million concept. The first news on the script's completion came around October 2016. So, yes, half the game's development was because of the script and relaying it to the designers. Reflecting on the colossal task, Cage discusses with Game Industry that it's a big burden, to be honest. I've just finished the script for Detroit. It took me more than 2 years, and that's working around 6 days a week. It's probably 20 times more complex than anything we've ever done. It's a lot for one brain to handle. Fortunately, I have a very talented team helping me keep track of the branches and finding good ideas for each one. When it's just one brain, you can only have so many good ideas in one day. The fact that it's collaborative work helps me, but I like the fact that it starts with something very personal.
For the first time in his career, Cage wasn't the only writer for a Quantic Dream production. He was writing alongside former TV writer Adam Williams. Williams' IMDb page only has a citation for Detroit, but a blog post on PlayStation.com does mention that he produced pilots for the BBC. While Adams was helping Cage with the writing, Mark Cerny, the genius behind Knack, was helping Quantic with the new engine that Detroit would be using, the PlayStation 4. The only fascinating factoid following the finishing of the fantasy was that 2 scenes were removed for how they depicted violence. 2015 was a tumultuous year for Paris, as it was marked by a terrorist attack that killed 130 people and injured 350 more. This was like a Mohammed Hassan situation, if any of you get that reference. Another trailer was shown at E3 2016, and let me just say that year's E3 was a banger. I did say maybe. Tekken 7, Fallout 4, Resident Evil 7, Titanfall 2, Meow, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Yakuza 0, Persona 5, Spider-Man PlayStation 4, Nier Automata, and Battleborn. Hoping to combat the stiff competition, Cage relied on what he did for Beyond Two Souls. Hollywood actors such as Clancy Brown, Lance Henriksen, Jesse Williams, and Brian Detchert to name a few. And just like with Beyond, all the actors would lend their likeness via 3D scanning. Total time to finish shooting the game was around 324 days if you go off the official announcement from Quantic Dream's Twitter. And I would be mistaken to not mention this, there are a total of 35,000 camera shots, 74,000 unique animations, and 5.1 million lines of code within Detroit. While music was being composed for the finished product, as there are 3 composers for the game, Philip Shepard for Kara, Nima Fakara for Connor, and John Pisano for Marcus, another round of trailers dropped for Detroit, one at E3 2017, Monster Hunter World, Xenoblade 2, and Danganronpa V3, and one at Paris Games Week. I'll skip over the E3 trailer as the Paris Games Week one had a bit of controversy and one that'll allow me to make fun of Europe a bit more. During the trailer, we see the beginning of Kara's scenario where she tries to protect a young girl by the name of Alice from her abusive father Todd. Voicing CSA, a UK-based organization, took umbrage with the scene, saying that it would
normalize child sexual abuse and domestic violence
in a tweet. A laughable claim if I ever heard one. One so laughable that Brian Detchert, the actor for Connor, quote tweeted the original tweet by asking VCSA, "Did anybody watch that trailer and think domestic violence was good?" Many people agreed with Detchert's rebuttal, some even being abuse victims themselves, with one Twitter user adding, "And because I can't fit this anywhere in the sentence, I got this from Hardcore Gamer." It's not normalizing anything, it's bringing up the topic unless you're saying domestic abuse shouldn't be talked about. As a survivor of domestic abuse, I have no issue with this game, even with the similarities to my childhood. I'm glad it's being shown how terrible it is. I would also like to add that Detroit, though it tries to come across as a movie, is a game and fictional, so claiming anyone is in any real world danger is bollocks. People didn't go out in the streets to shoot each other because of Postal or GTA, nor do they look at people as objects because of how a fictional character looks, nor did they start abusing kids because Alice got rocked by her father. Yet VCSA didn't get the hint about how wrong they were, doubling down by tweeting,
"Justifying child sexual abuse and domestic violence in a game because it is an artistic medium is quite frankly bullshit. Not only will it prove popular with abusers, it will also fall into the hands of children who will consider that it is an accepted fate."
If you want to have a giggle, look at the following tweets that point out the double standard CSA is taking by only mentioning games while overlooking movies and TV shows and how the game is not meant for children. The first demo for the game made its way to the PlayStation Store on April 24th, 2018, it being the first sequence in the game, The Hostage. In probably the coolest fashion, a short live-action film was made to promote the game in Japan, the title being Tokyo Become Human. What followed it was the launch trailer and a few animated shorts to set up the characters of Elijah Kamsky, the man behind the creation of the androids, and Chloe, the very first deviant. Detroit Become Human was finally released on May 25th, 2018 to the PlayStation 4 and on December 12th, 2019 alongside Reign of Beyond on Epic Games Store. The story doesn't end here though, as just after the release of Detroit, a plethora of reports broke out stating that Quantic was propagating a toxic working environment, as per the words of The Guardian. Supposedly Cage and co-CEO Guillaume de Fondemire, and yes, this is the first time I've mentioned him, but his only real importance to Quantic was that he was and still is the executive producer, allowed Photoshopped images to fly about within the company. These images depicted the employees of the 180-strong studio in Nazi uniforms, swimming costumes, and sexualized nurse outfits. Some of the employees even accused Cage and Guillaume of being both racist and sexist. The two denied the allegations, with Cage using his games as a way to proclaim his innocence as he worked with Elliot Page, a figurehead for LGBTQ rights, and Jesse Williams, a figurehead for civil rights in the United States. I mean, Beyond and Detroit aren't the best examples to use, seeing as one includes a new nude model of Elliot, then Ellen Page's character Jodie, and Detroit handles its racial allegory about as well as me being told Kiara isn't real. But luckily for Cage and Guillaume, the true story came out. The claims were all blackmail from a former IT manager. Taken from VentureBeat, the reason for the photographs was because a lead programmer at Quantic Dream entertained himself by creating photo montages during his lunch break. He put the heads of his fellow employees on the bodies of various celebrities and other images. He shared these images with friends and managers, including Cage. Cage said that the employee honored requests by employees who didn't want to be in the images, which were sometimes posted, often by the photo subjects themselves, at the coffee machine. It was dumb fun and no one complained about this practice, which went on for about 3 years. It was only when the employee shared the entire 600 photo collection on February 27, 2017 did issues arise, as some of the photos were a bit spicy. Not ghost chili, however, more Tabasco, as the image using the IT manager's face had his placed onto super nannies. Cage did recognize this as inappropriate, however, and reprimanded the programmer and asked him to apologize to the manager. The event also got him a formal warning, a written document that goes onto an employee's record, and for the sake of sorting out the bullshit, was verified to have happened by 3 independent mediators. This is where things fall to shit, as though the manager did accept the apology initially, he reneged later and proclaimed that he wanted the creator of the photo to be dismissed immediately and that he wanted to be compensated with 1 year's salary plus 40%, otherwise he would tell the whole story to the press. Spotting blackmail, Cage sought to deal with the issue, but the manager didn't take any deal he was given. 3 other people from IT resigned to show support and started demanding compensation as well. With Cage not moving a budge, the manager tried to take his claims to a few government offices, but no dice. Cage had already provided them with proper information, thus making an investigation pointless. But you know who will take baseless slander and turn it into libel? Journalists. I would talk about a bunch of legal jargon, but seeing as I've yet to even do the story recap or analysis, I'll end this part by saying that the IT manager did receive around 5,000 euros for compensation, as Quantic and Cage should have recognized the potential inappropriateness when it came to the programmer taking photos and editing them. But the case is still ongoing, with a hearing set for May 2021. If I've finished this video by the time that rolls around, you are on your own to determine how that story ends. The version of Detroit I played was the PlayStation 4 copy. This is redundant, as I said I got this game for free on PlayStation Plus. Word of warning here, the story summary I'm about to give is only a part of Detroit Become Human's narrative. There are branching paths and purposefully missable content that can change how the story pans out. I won't go over what all is possible, just what my 3 versions of the characters accomplished. With that said, our tale doesn't begin just yet as we get introduced to the stewardess of the main menu, Chloe.
Hello. Welcome to the Detroit Experience. I'm an android and I'll be your hostess. Before we begin, let's make some adjustments to optimize your experience. These language settings were detected on your console. Are they correct?
I know it feels weird bringing this up right now, but there isn't a better place for me to talk about her as I don't consider her part of the gameplay. Chloe will comment on your story progression, any choices that you've made, any characters that have died, as well as provide surveys to answer. I'll return to her at the end of this recap, so keep in mind that she exists. Being sent away from Chloe with a warning that this isn't a story but a possible reality that may come true, our narrative starts in an elevator on August 15th, 2038. Riding said elevator is a male android, as his jacket has the word emboldened on the back next to his model number, and there is an obvious LED in his temple. He's practicing a coin trick while waiting for the elevator to reach its destination, the penthouse suite. Whatever has happened in this apartment, the lodgings have been trashed and cops in full riot gear are on the scene. Spotting our man in the elevator, one of the said cops tells the others that the negotiator has arrived. Following the cop, the negotiator finds a picture of the family who lives at this location and even runs into the mother/wife being removed from the premises. She's hysterical because her daughter has been taken hostage, begging to our yet-to-be-named negotiator to save her, but her tune quickly changes when she notices that our guy is an android.
Please, you gotta save my little girl. Wait. You're sending an android?
All right, ma'am. You need to go.
You can't do that. Why aren't you sending a real person?
Something tells me humans don't like robot people in this story, as when our negotiator goes to be briefed by Captain Allen, the officer in charge, we hear that he'd much rather go in gung-ho than let an android de-escalate the situation. Introducing himself to the captain, Connor, our android friend sent by Cyberlife, requests some basic information about the hostage situation from Alan to no avail. Time is precious in this pressure cooker, so instead of wasting any more of it, Connor chooses to search around the dwellings for any clues. The hostage taker in this situation was the family's android, whose name is Daniel, and his reasoning for taking the daughter hostage was because he was going to be replaced with a more advanced model. Daniel had a tight bond with the family's daughter, though that didn't stop the father from deciding to replace him. Beginning his rampage with the dad, Daniel sneakily stole his gun and used it to blast the father into Kingdom Come. It's around this moment Daniel takes the daughter hostage and a first responder has been called. While the daughter didn't witness the death of her father, she did get to see in gruesome detail the moment Daniel killed the first responder, who did manage to get a shot off on Daniel, wounding him. Evening the playing field, Connor takes the gun dropped by the first responder as he doesn't know how things will pan out and he might need it, though this action is against the Android Act. Before heading out to see if he can talk down Daniel, Connor does listen to the live news report playing in the kitchen. This is the first time an android has ever taken a human life.
He may have taken the lives of at least one family member and a police officer. If confirmed, this would be the first case of an android deliberately taking human lives.
Confirming that Daniel is wounded, Connor tastes some of the blue blood on the floor belonging to the hostage taker, which reveals his make and model. Connor's inner thoughts, at least that is what I'm going to describe the massive text box floating around him as, use the word deviant in relation to Daniel. This term was also on the ticker tape scrolling during the news. For sake of simplicity, as I will be going back to this term, deviant is shorthand for a malfunctioning android. Having done what he would consider a decent enough job of investigating, Connor walks out onto the terrace to begin negotiating. He's met with a warning shot from Daniel grazing Connor's upper arm, but that doesn't stop him from calling out Daniel's name to begin talking him down.
Hi, Daniel. My name is Connor. How do you know my name? I know a lot of things about you.
Making a slow approach to the deviant so as to not put him on edge, Connor's careful plan of attack hits a snag when a police chopper rushes into the picture. Since he can't back down now, Connor proceeds in his attempt to get Daniel off the ledge. Worried that Connor is armed, Daniel asks if he is. Well, he wasn't when he came to the building, at least that's what Connor says, so it's totally not lying. Continuing his approach, Connor relies on the clues he found to form a connection with Daniel and absolve any wrongdoings he has done by saying that it wasn't his fault, just his programming's. At this point, the Choppa has become an oversized fly to Daniel and he demands it to buzz off. Seeing as Connor doesn't want this to end with a third human fatality, he honors the request. With the stage set, Connor begs Daniel to trust him, the deviant choosing to do so. However, Daniel will only let go of the hostage once everyone leaves and he gets a ride out of the city. Upon hearing that, Connor throws a compromise Daniel's way. Let go of the girl now and he won't be hurt. Expressing a fear of death, Daniel once again trusts Connor and lets go of the daughter.
Girl, go, and I promise you won't be hurt. I don't want to die. You're not going to die. We're just going to talk. Nothing will happen to you. You have my word. Okay. I trust you.
This trust was misplaced in the end because as soon as he does so, a SWAT sniper positioned on an adjacent building takes Daniel out. His last words, an accusation directed at the negotiator. Man, this would be way more awkward if Connor was the one to kill Daniel. Completed with his mission, Connor leaves the scene of the crime. Barely 20 minutes in, no, not video-wise, as I'm pretty sure this is the 40-minute mark now, we get a POV interlude of how Android sales work in this world. Think of them like your smartphone, only if it walked, talked, and acted like a person but had no free will. Replicants or replicas? You decide which reference you like more. The android we are in the perspective of apparently had to be sent in for repairs, as the man who is her owner, a rotund bundle of joy that clearly has his life together, explains to the store's clerk that she got hit by a car. You know, that common occurrence of letting your android wander into the street. I mean, this is Detroit, a place where you can't have shit in, so maybe it's possible.
The darkness of the afterlife is all that awaits you now. May you find more peace in that world than you found in this one.
That includes memories if you're wondering, as Kara, who is the same one from the tech demo, needed to be reset during repairs, wiping her memory banks. Finished with registering her name, which was picked out by the schlub's daughter, we and Kara are subjected to a title sequence advertising our locale for the story. Detroit, Michigan. I should feel right at home then. We also get hints that the capital nor the state are doing so well, as unemployment caused by androids seems to be high. Elsewhere, as an android without a model number picks up paints from a local arts and crafts store. Along the way to the store, this unnamed and unmarked android gets berated by a number of humans who don't like his kind. To top it off, when he finds the paints and heads back home, he has to get on the back of the bus with all the other androids. Get it? Get it? Get it? Something tells me David Cage is equating androids to African Americans, but there's no way to tell. Not with the subtle imagery he's using. Anyway, as that android delivers the paints to whoever needs them, Kara has reached her destination, a crummy old house on the outskirts of Detroit. This is where her owner, Todd, lives with his daughter, and if you thought the outside looked bad, the inside is a gold standard on an episode of Hoarders. That's why Todd had Kara repaired, as her line of android is centered around house and childcare. Speaking of children, it's obvious that Todd doesn't care about his daughter Alice, what with referring to her as a brat in a pointed tone.
Alice! Oh, there you are. That's Alice. You look after her. Homework, bath, all that crap. Got it?
Yes, Todd.
Get started down here, then you do upstairs.
Finished with laying down what she needs to do, Todd sits down to watch some hockey while Kara does the chores. While she's doing them, Kara does manage to get a bit closer to Alice and discovers that Todd not only has a drug problem, but may also be slinging his narcotic of choice: red ice. It's like Blue Sky, only red. Though Todd does get forceful with Kara when she finds his habit, he did leave his baggie in the laundry detergent for anyone to find. Completed with the downstairs chores, Kara moves upstairs to tidy them as well, starting with Todd's room. Cleaning up in there, Kara accidentally drops a leaflet while stacking some documents. To save the story some embarrassment for a reveal that everyone can see coming except for Kara, the document, which is purposely blurred out and unfocused when Kara goes to grab it, even though you can still tell what's on it, is an advertisement for child androids. What does this mean? Alice is a robot, though be prepared for that confession to be drawn out like Sisyphus pushing up his boulder, because in the end, this will all be pointless. Kara also finds a gun in one of Todd's drawers, a locked prompt pop-up that only we see, noting that it will probably be used later. Done with her cleaning, Kara hangs out with Alice for a bit, the little android trusting Kara enough to give her a key to a music box. In said music box are some of Alice's drawings, each depicting a moment in the girl's life. Looks like random acts of android hit and run aren't a thing. Putting the pictures back into the box, Kara goes to report to Todd, only to spot him cartoonishly abusing Alice. In the span that it took Kara to clean Todd's house, Marcus, the android who is the one purchasing the paints, arrives at his abode, a luxurious, if eccentric mansion owned by renowned painter Michael Bishop. Or Lance, but that would mean Marcus's owner, real name Carl Manfred, would be a synth too. Although Marcus is Carl's caretaker, it's easy to see that the retiree, who is still being invited to fancy balls, treats the android more like a son than his actual one, allowing him free time to engage in activities like reading Shakespeare's Macbeth while Carl eats breakfast.
What are you reading?
Macbeth. It's one of the books you recommended.
So, what do you think?
Human emotions are intriguing. Though, I can't really say that I fully understand them.
Humans don't understand them either. They rule our lives, but we have no idea why they make us feel like beggars or kings. Life without emotions wouldn't be worth living.
Should have been Othello if they wanted to draw a better parallel. Wrapping up his breakfast, Carl asks Marcus to bring him to his studio so that he can continue working on his newest painting. Not feeling it today, probably because he doesn't have long left in this world, Carl stops painting, instead asking Marcus to see if he has any talent for it. At first, Marcus replicates a desk within the studio to Carl's lack of enthusiasm. He wants to see what is inside Marcus's soul. Directed to close his eyes, Marcus does so and paints what he is feeling onto the second canvas. Doubt over his identity.
God.
Right when Marcus concludes and before Carl can speak his amazement over this second painting, Leo, Carl's real son, barges in unannounced to demand money from his father. It appears that Leo has a drug addiction that needs feeding, something Carl calls him out on. Receiving no as an answer, Leo takes his frustrations out on Marcus for being the perceived perfect son and Carl for not loving anyone before leaving. Absconding from that boiling pot, we return back to Connor as he enters Jimmy's bar. Despite a sign on the front proclaiming humans only, Connor enters all big-dicked like to find the Kurgan. Police Lieutenant Hank Anderson. Finding him murdering his liver, Connor introduces himself before telling Hank that the two have been assigned a case. The crime? Murder! Another CyberLife android has gone deviant, though Hank would much rather drown his sorrows, calling Connor a plastic asshole and waving him away. Connor does his best to convince Hank with words, but when that fails, Connor takes the path of least resistance, ordering Hank one for the road.
You know what? I'll buy you one for the road. What do you say? Bartender, the same again, please.
See that, Jim? Wonders of technology. Make it a double. Did you say homicide?
Amused by this, Hank finds his wits and drives the duo to the crime scene. Telling Connor to stay in the car, Hank is annoyed when he doesn't, though Connor does tell him that his priorities picked solving the murder over Hank's orders. Connor did try to follow them, though. Entering the crime scene, which still has the victim's mutilated body inside, Hank and Connor get a rundown on what the basics are. The man with 28 stab wounds is Carlos Ortiz, a guy with a known criminal record and a loner personality. Judging by the state his body is in, he's been dead for 3 weeks. The killer, Carlos's android, didn't bother to hide the murder weapon, a kitchen knife, as androids don't have fingerprints and there were no signs of a break-in. Said android wasn't seen at the scene of the crime, so perhaps it managed to get away. Left to his own devices, Connor examines the crime scene. To begin, there are multiple signs that the android went deviant, as not only above Carlos's body is the phrase, "I am alive," written in CyberLife sans, there is a strange statue and obsessive writing centered around a figure called RA9 in the bathroom. Taking a closer look at the evidence, Connor reconstructs what went down, finding out that Carlos attacked his android first. Possibly due to red ice, though that is speculation, and Carlos's background already proves his violent tendencies, with a baseball bat in the kitchen where the android grabbed a knife to defend itself. The scuffle moved into the living room where Carlos was killed. Detailing everything to Hank, Connor is told that his Fury isn't off base, but it doesn't tell the cops where the android is. Knowing that it was damaged and leaking therium, which is the proper name for blue blood and a component of red ice, Connor treks the android to the attic. Scared and badly injured, he tries to dissuade Connor from announcing its presence, but Connor does so anyway.
I was just defending myself. He was gonna kill me. I'm begging you. Don't tell him.
Connor, what the fuck is going on up there?
It's here, Lieutenant!
Oh, shit. Chris, Ben, get your asses in here now! Come on!
While the police are setting up an interrogation, Kara is about to be going through her own issues. Dinner, our first plate of hefty spaghetti, is ready at Todd's house, though no one wants to eat. Mainly because Todd would much rather rant about androids plus his shitty life and beat on his robot daughter. One off-screen slap later, Alice runs upstairs to the dulcet tones of Todd's commands. Wanting to salvage this situation somehow, Kara tries to move, but Todd warns her to stand still unless she wants a rematch with the car. Realizing how wrong it would be for her to follow that instruction, Kara does her best Jericho impression and becomes deviant, her goal going from standing still to protecting Alice.
You know I gotcha. Yeah. One. Break the wall. Break down the walls. Foot down with the back to the ground. Watch the wall. Baby, you know you're Judas. And I'm your priest. Baby, I'm the goddess.
Figuring that Todd is a man of reason, Kara tries to calm him down to no avail. Only becoming angrier, Todd rushes upstairs to commence his flogging of Alice, though Kara's right behind him and uses the Chinkov's gun introduced earlier. Funny play on words make brain happy. A tussle ensues between Kara and Todd, ending with a .357 declaration of protection. Knowing that staying at the house would be a liability, Kara takes Alice and gets the two onto a nearby bus. Destination? Anywhere but here. Rough nights for everyone not named Connor, as when Marcus and Carl return home after another dinner party, the two find that someone has broken into the studio. Calling the cops before checking out who it is, Marcus and Carl catch Leo scavenging some paintings so he can sell them. Fed up with his deadbeat son, Carl gets his real one to make Leo leave, to poor results. Getting up in Marcus's face, Leo continues with what he said earlier, but when Carl tries to wheel in to break up the tirade, he gets shoved for his efforts. Leo is goading Marcus into hitting him, though Carl requests Marcus to stand down. Comprehending how unfair it is to be unable to fight back, and with Carl expressing signs of a heart attack, Marcus becomes deviant, pushing Leo accidentally onto Carl's wheelchair holder.
Oh, right, that's right. I forgot you're not a real person. You're just a fucking piece of plastic. Oh, Leo, leave him alone. No. I'm gonna destroy you. Then it'll just be me and my dad.
The weight of his actions doesn't catch Marcus until he sees Carl leave his wheelchair to comfort the unconscious Leo. Yeah, you heard me, unconscious. He didn't die from that. That's what happens when you have a smooth brain like Leo. Marcus tries to apologize to Carl, but since both know that the cops will be arriving soon, he tells Marcus to run away, knowing that they will shoot him on sight, which is what happens. Meanwhile, Hank is trying to interrogate Carlos's android to no avail. Watching this train wreck is Connor and a few other officers from the DCPD, who Hank reunites with when he sees that his effort is a losing one. Gavin, one of Hank's workmates, suggests hurting the android, but Connor shoots down that idea by saying that androids don't feel pain and deviants tend to off themselves in stressful situations. With nothing to lose, Connor throws his tie into the ring, asking if he could interrogate it. Hank lets him, citing what I said at the beginning of the last sentence. Checking over the collected evidence and scanning the android to form a game plan, Connor begins by stressing out the android by going over the crime scene and threatening him with the reality of the situation. Snapping out of his daze, Carlos's android, he doesn't have a name, so if you want to give him one, post in the comments below, asks what will happen to him. Without mincing words, Connor goes into detail the process that awaits the android if he doesn't talk. However, the android still doesn't provide anything tangible, forcing Connor to change his approach. Deciding to convince him, Connor succeeds in getting the android to talk. Carlos's android was mistreated by him, which was a common occurrence until Carlos stepped up to the plate with a baseball bat. Overcome with distinct fear, the android fought back. Having the android on his side, Connor asks about the memorabilia and writing in the bathroom. The statue was an offering to RA9, a savior figure to androids everywhere that will break them out of bondage and possibly make them the masters. Closing out the interrogation, Connor asks when did the android become deviant and why did it hide in the attic. For the first question, the android became deviant when it saw its circumstance as unfair, and for the second, he didn't know where to go or what to do. Satisfied with a job well done, Connor allows the officers to take the android away to a holding cell, but when they start to move him, the android begins freaking out, yelling aloud that it doesn't want to be touched. Connor intervenes 3 times to prevent the deviant from self-destructing, earning the ire of Gavin, who pulls his gun on Connor, and the admiration of Hank, who pulls his gun on Gavin.
You don't understand. If it self-destructs, we won't get anything out of it.
I told you to shut your fucking mouth. Chris, you gonna move this asshole or what?
I'm trying. I can't let you do that. Leave it alone now.
I warned you, motherfucker. That's enough. Mind your own business, Hank. I said that's enough. You're not gonna get away with it this time.
Though he would love to blast Connor, Gavin chooses not to, letting loose the 2 weakest instances of the word fuck. Seeing the trust that Connor placed onto him, Carlos's android gives Connor a hint. The truth is inside. Switching back over to the runaways, Kara and Alice are kicked off the bus as it has reached the end of the line. A cold rain has set in, causing Kara, who is willfully accepting the false reality that Alice is human, to scan around the two's location. Before she can properly check the rundown house, the abandoned car, or the motel in this intersection of Detroit, a Trashman android provides information to Kara about where the duo should head to after this night. Making new clothes a top concern, Kara steals some from a local laundromat in this intersection before stowing herself and Alice in the abandoned car to hopefully avoid drawing attention to themselves. In the car, Alice pours her artificial heart out to Kara before proposing a promise to her caretaker. Will the two be together forever? Kara binds herself to it.
Why didn't he ever love me? Why was he always so upset with me? All I wanted was a life like other girls. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I wasn't good enough. That's why he was always so angry. I just wanted us to be a family. I just wanted him to love me. Why can't we just be happy? I don't know, Alice. You'll never leave me, right? Promise you'll never go. I promise. Will we be together forever? Forever.
While they settle in for the night, Marcus awakens to find himself busted up and in an android landfill. Not wanting this place to be his grave, Marcus does his best to find replacement parts amidst the decay. Though some androids try to stop him, one telling him to find Jericho while uploading a cipher to Marcus's person, the reborn android leaves the tomb. Taking the LED out of his head so that no one knows he's an android, Marcus begins his search for Jericho. Contrasting the rot from the previous scene, we return back to Connor in a peaceful garden. His mind palace. Connor isn't the only person in his mind palace, mind you, as his advisor Amanda is in the Etherscape as well.
Hello, Amanda.
Connor, it's good to see you.
She congratulates Connor for his successful interrogation before asking him what he thought about the Deviant. Being blunt, Connor expresses that Carlos's android was only simulating the emotion of fear. This isn't the only question Amanda gives Connor, as she tells him that Hank has been assigned to the deviancy case before asking Connor for his honest thoughts. Connor doesn't know what to make of Hank, leading Amanda to tell Connor that he will be working with the drunkard. Asking one last question, Amanda probes Connor for what stance he will take with Hank. Indifferent is Connor's answer, pleasing Amanda. Rounding out their talk by saying that Connor is the last line of defense from deviancy, Amanda sends him on his way to the DCPD. Probably a bit too early, too, as when Connor arrives, he is told by the department stewardess android that Hank hasn't shown up yet. Spending time until he shows up, Connor scans Hank's desk, finding out that he has a dog, likes heavy metal and the Detroit Gears basketball team, dislikes androids, and is an accomplished officer, his rank of lieutenant earned from his work of a large red ice bust. Just as Connor finishes with his scan, Hank shows up, exasperated that Connor has made a reappearance in his life. Before he can say anything to his sidekick, though, Captain Fowler calls Hank into his office, Connor following behind to hear Hank get a stern talking down to.
I've got 10 new cases involving androids on my desk every day. We've always had isolated incidents. Old ladies losing their android maids and that kind of crap. But now, we're getting reports of assaults and even homicide, like that guy last night. This isn't just CyberLife's problem anymore. It's now a criminal investigation, and we've got to deal with it before the shit hits the fan. I want you to investigate these cases and see if there's any link.
Why me? Why do I gotta be the one to deal with this shit? I am the least qualified cop in the country to handle this case. I know jack shit about androids, Jeffrey. I can barely change the settings on my own phone.
Everybody's overloaded. I think you're perfectly qualified for this type of investigation.
Bullshit! The truth is, nobody wants to investigate these fucking androids, and you left me holding the bag.
CyberLife sent over this android to help with the investigation. It's a state-of-the-art prototype. It'll act as your partner.
No fucking way! I don't need a partner, and certainly not this plastic prick.
Hank, you are seriously starting to piss me off. You are a police lieutenant. You are supposed to do what I say and shut your goddamn mouth.
You know what my goddamn mouth has to say to you?
Okay,
huh?
Okay. I'll pretend like I didn't hear that, so I don't have to add any more pages to your disciplinary folder, because it already looks like a fucking novel. This conversation is over.
Jeffrey, Jesus Christ, why are you doing this to me? You know how much I hate these fucking things. Why are you doing this to me?
Listen, I've had just about enough of your bitching. Either you do your job or you hand in your badge. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do.
Enraged by his inability to do anything besides follow Fowler's orders to investigate the deviant case, Hank storms out of his office, Connor once again following behind. Wanting Hank to feel a bit better, Connor tries some small talk with him, bringing up Hank's dog, his name is Sumo, and heavy metal to the lieutenant, slightly elevating Hank's mood.
You have a dog, right?
How do you know that?
The dog hair's on your chair. I like dogs. What's your dog's name?
What's it to you? Sumo. I call him Sumo.
Do you listen to Knights of the Black Death? I really like that music. It's full of energy.
You listen to heavy metal?
Well, I don't really listen to music as such. but I'd like to. Have you known Captain Fowler for long?
Yeah, too long.
Ending the short conversation, Connor asks to see the files connected to the case he and Hank have been assigned to. A whopping 243 files spanning the previous 9 months are on record, some cases in Detroit, others not. One that pops out to Connor is Kara's report. Someone found Todd's body, as he thinks it would be the perfect place to start. Hank, on the other hand, doesn't, not really wanting to be involved with something he didn't ask for, causing Connor to prod him, a bad idea as it only angers the lieutenant.
I know you didn't ask for this investigation, Lieutenant, but I'm sure you're a professional.
Why don't you go fuck yourself?
I've been assigned this mission, Lieutenant. I didn't come here to wait until you feel like working.
Listen, asshole. If it was up to me, I'd throw the lot of you in a dumpster and set a match to it. So stop pissing me off. Or things are gonna get nasty.
Lieutenant?
Right when Hank tells Connor how ample his animus about androids is, a fellow human officer tips off Hank the location of Kara. Two of our timelines cross over at this moment as Kara finds herself in a rather precarious circumstance. Cops are all over Ravendale looking for her and Alice. Taking a pair of scissors that found themselves in the abandoned lot, Kara cuts her hair, changes its color, and tears out her LED. She then alerts Alice to the police search happening around them and that the two need to get to the train on the other side of the street so they can reach the location given to Kara by the trash man from last night. As the two start their stealthy escape, Connor and Hank catch up with the officers already in Ravendale. Ultimately, Kara and Alice avoid the cops and get on the train, leaving Connor and Hank none the wiser. It's not like Hank wanted to find Kara anyway. Leaving those two groups be for the moment, the story catches back up with Marcus, who is combing the streets of Detroit for Jericho, finding a large tanker by the name hidden in the historic district that a group of deviants is using as a sanctuary.
Welcome to Jericho.
Before we can see how the deviants will welcome Marcus, the story shifts back to Connor and Hank arriving at the Chicken Feed food truck. The two aren't on the clock anymore, giving Hank time for lunch. Connor, meanwhile, wants to apologize to Hank since he did rile him up earlier, though before he can, one of Hank's friends, an illegal gambler by the name of Pedro, gives him some insider information about a local horse race. Placing his bet, Hank hopes that he doesn't go bust as Pedro goes to arrange it. Free from waiting for the conversation to end, Connor apologizes to Hank, and while the lieutenant calls him out for brown-nosing, the gesture is appreciated. Correspondingly, when Connor communicates concern over the illicit activities that Hank's friends immerse themselves in, Hank tells him not to worry as they aren't hurting anyone.
I don't want to alarm you, Lieutenant, but I think your friends are engaged in illegal activities.
Well, everybody does what they have to get by. As long as they're not hurting anybody, I don't bother them.
That exhibition of worry deeming Connor a friend in Hank's books. Not wanting to be the only one asking questions, Connor wonders if Hank has any of his own. He does. Why does Connor look and sound so goofy? CyberLife constructed Connor the way that he is so that he could better integrate with society, though Hank fobs that answer off by saying CyberLife fucked up. Keeping with answering questions, Connor tells Hank why androids might go deviant. When receiving an irrational objective, an android might be overwhelmed and start emulating human behavior. Spotting the irony in that, Hank tells Connor that emotions can cause all sorts of problems, that maybe the two races aren't that different from each other.
Emotions always screw everything up. The androids aren't as different from us as we thought.
Ending with one final question, Connor asks Hank why he hates androids, but the lieutenant evades it, instead countering with his own question, curious if Connor has dealt with deviants before. Relating the events of the hostage, Connor says he has. Taking notice of how much Connor has delved into him, Hank ponders if the android knows everything about the lieutenant, with Connor answering truthfully and sincerely.
I know you graduated top of your class. You made a name for yourself in several cases and became the youngest lieutenant in Detroit. I also know you've received several disciplinary warnings in recent years, and you spend a lot of time in bars.
So what's your conclusion?
I think working with an officer with personal issues is an added challenge, but adapting to human unpredictability is one of my features.
Touched by the show of honesty, Hank finishes his meal as Connor gets an APB, informing the two about a deviant in the area. Said deviant has taken to squatting in a destitute apartment filled with pigeons, and though there was a loud banging noise when our buddy cop duo tried doing things the easy way by knocking on the door, when they kick it down, they see the deviant is nowhere to be seen. Beginning a small-scale search, Connor finds evidence that the android is a deviant. It took to caring for pigeons, had obsessively written RA9 on the bathroom walls, ripped out its LED, and kept a coded diary. Going more in depth by using his scanning feature, Connor finds out that the android, who is named Rupert, was originally writing the RA9 code sign on the wall before Connor and Hank arrived. When they knocked on the door, Rupert fled from the bathroom, knocking over a bird cage into a hole in the ceiling. Examining the hole, Connor finds Rupert, but unlike Carlos's android, Rupert doesn't resign himself, instead running away from Connor and Hank, who give chase. Though Connor is able to keep up with Rupert, when Hank tries ambushing the chasee, he ends up being pushed off a building, giving Connor two choices: continue the chase or rescue Hank. Doing the correct thing, Connor rescues Hank. Back with Marcus, he gets a proper Jericho welcome from the three leaders: Josh, Simon, and North. Yet Marcus is unimpressed with the state of the alleged haven, as it doesn't offer freedom. In essence, it's a hiding spot until mechanical death. That fact is made apparent when Marcus looks around the hovel, spotting a few androids at critical condition and a lack of blue blood and biocomponents. Charting a path to a warehouse to find more, Marcus waits to bring up his plan until after he gets to know the leaders better and gets his wound fixed by Lucy. I failed to mention how Marcus entered Jericho, but he took a nasty fall that damaged his chassis. Finding Lucy, she repairs the cut to Marcus's body before telling him that there is a prophecy attached to him. A will of light and a will of shadow coexist in Marcus at the moment, but one will undoubtedly overpower the other and shape the lives of all androids.
Show me. I'll stop the bleeding. Drink this. Give me your hand. You had it all, and you lost it all. You've seen hell, and now hell lives in you. Your heart is troubled. A part of shadow and a part of light. Which will prevail? Your choices will shape our destiny.
After being slightly spooked by that announcement, Marcus tells Simon, Josh, and North that the four will go to a CyberLife warehouse by the docks to steal parts to help Jericho sick. North and Simon agreed to the plan, though Josh is hesitant to go forward with the idea on the off chance the group gets caught.
I know where we can find spare parts. CyberLife warehouse is in the Detroit harbor. They have everything we need.
The docks are guarded. We can't just walk in there and take what we want. Humans will never let us.
Which is why we won't ask permission.
We don't have any weapons. And even if we did, none of us knows how to fight.
We can steal what we need without fighting.
We'll just get ourselves killed.
Maybe. But it's better than waiting here to be shut down.
I'm with you.
Maybe it's worth a try.
Okay. I'm in.
Returning back to our budding road trip, Kara and Alice find the location given to them by the Trash Man, a large Resident Evil-esque mansion owned by a man by the name of Zlatko. At first, Zlatko tries to send away Kara and Alice, but when Kara insists that they need help, Zlatko welcomes the two into his estate. The man with the most threatening of names isn't the only person inside, as Zlatko has his own personal assistant in the form of Luther, who takes the girls' coats so that they can dry.
Luther, would you be so kind as to take these ladies' coats? Oh, don't be afraid of our big friend here. Luther is just another android that I helped. He keeps me company in this big, empty old house. Please, make yourselves at home.
Cutting to the chase, Zlatko directs Kara and Alice to Canada as the country has no android laws, but before the two can get there, Zlatko needs to remove Kara's tracker. While Zlatko is leading the two into the most obvious of traps, Alice does notice something behind bars when Kara and she follow him into the basement. To remove Kara's tracker, Zlatko needs her to step into some rather sinister-looking machinery, and she does so without pause. Knowing that he's caught himself an idiot, Zlatko easily restrains Kara before proceeding to taunt her over what is going to happen to her. She'll be factory reset and become a slave to him.
Strange. For some unknown reason, the trackers seem to stop working in Deviants. That's why it's so hard to find them. So, actually, there's no reason to remove your tracker.
What? But you said that...
Yeah, people believe what they want. You Deviants are so naive. They'll come to me expecting me to help them. And I just reset them, sell them on. Or I keep them for my little experiments.
No! No! I don't want to be reset! Let me go!
Oh, I forgot about the child.
Zlatko leaves Kara to her fate while taking Alice and Luther with him, though Luther does show his loyalty by saying to Kara that he'll be in the living room when her mind wipe is over. Instead of giving up at this foreseeable cruel twist of fate, Kara struggles out of the machine, causing a power outage that Rube Goldberg would be proud of. Free of the machine, Kara checks the cells that Alice was looking at. They house a number of macabre android experiments. Deadass, one of the twisted forms calls Zlatko the real monster.
He likes to play with us, creating monsters for his amusement. But who's the real monster?
With the cells open, Kara heads upstairs to learn that she has 10 minutes to find Alice before Zlatko goes to do whatever he's going to do to her. In that time, Kara releases an android bear from its holding cell and learns that Luther is apologetic for his role in all of this before finding Alice. Time seems to warp ahead though, as that previous 10 minutes is up no matter how long it took Kara to find her ward, forcing the two girls to hide from Zlatko and Luther. Seeing a lit fireplace in their hiding spot, Kara takes a burning piece of lumber and throws it onto onto the floor, causing the mansion to catch fire and distract Zlatko and Luther, allowing the two girls to sneakily get away. Or it would if Zlatko didn't immediately catch them on their way out and endanger them with a shotgun.
I warned you. Dreams always end in tears. You should have listened to me.
However, Luther shows his true colors, taking the gun away from Zlatko so he can do no more harm. Luther doesn't kill Zlatko, instead his experiments beat him into chunky red salsa, and the bear from earlier roams free to... well, it just roams free. Our two-girl group evolves into a three-man band as Luther joins Kara's party. Another day, another moment in the Mind Palace with Connor, who reports his failure to apprehend Rupert to Amanda. She's annoyed that Connor didn't fulfill his mission, to which Connor has no excuse.
That deviant seemed to be an intriguing case. Pity you didn't manage to capture it.
I have no excuse. I should have been more efficient.
Changing the topic, Amanda asks about Hank, Connor telling her that he saved the lieutenant. Freeing Connor from more talking by drawing his attention to a new case, Amanda tells him to find Hank so the two can look into it. Following her orders, Connor arrives at Hank's home, finding the man sloshed on the floor next to a loaded revolver. With no conventional way to get inside the lieutenant's house, Connor busts a window and jumps through, though this causes Sumo to be in Connor's grill. Knowing the dog's name, Connor calms him down before helping Hank to get sober and telling him where they are needed.
Easy, Sumo. I'm your friend. See? I know your name. I'm here to save your owner. Lieutenant. Wake up, Lieutenant. It's me, Connor. I'm going to sober you up for your own safety. I'll have to warn you.
Leave me
This may be
alone,
unpleasant.
fucking android. Get the fuck out of my house.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but I need you. Thank you in advance for your cooperation.
Get the fuck out of here! Sumo! Attack! Good job. Attack! Fuck, I think I'm gonna be sick. Oh, leave me alone, you asshole. I'm not going anywhere. What the hell are you doing? I don't want a bath. Thank you.
Sorry, Lieutenant. It's for your own good.
Turn it on! Turn it off! What the fuck are you doing here?
A homicide was reported 43 minutes ago. I couldn't find you at Jimmy's bar, so I came to see if you were at home.
Jesus, I must be the only cop in the world that gets assaulted in his own house by his own fucking android. Can't you just leave me alone?
You seem to have personal issues. You should consult a professional who can help you.
Beat it, you hear me? Get the hell out of here!
I understand. It probably wasn't interesting anyway. A man found dead in a sex club downtown. Guess they'll have to solve the case without us.
You know, probably wouldn't do me any harm to get some air. There's some clothes in the bedroom there.
I'll go get them.
Grabbing some clothes so that Hank can get properly dressed, a loose definition what with all the Hawaiian shirts in Hank's closet, Connor has some downtime which he spends by examining a picture frame on Hank's dinner table, Connor learning that Hank had a son by the name of Cole, and cleaning up the scene of Hank's drunken game of Russian roulette. Having refreshed himself the best he can, Hank and Connor drive over to the scene of the crime, an android strip club, but before we can continue with that plot thread, we jump back to Marcus and the Jericho group who are in the midst of raiding the CyberLife warehouse. For the most part, the ransacking goes well enough until an android dock worker spots the four. Thinking fast, Marcus grabs a hold of the android so that it isn't able to yell out for help when its human supervisor comes looking for it. Inadvertently, Marcus gives the android free will, but he doesn't find that out until he purposely does it to a few other androids that were going to be shipped out.
Why aren't you like us? Don't you want to be free? You could join us.
Reaching carrying capacity, Jericho goes to move out, but John, now with free will, asks to tag along. Norf and Simon speak their concern while Josh is all for the idea, leaving Marcus to be the tiebreaker. Accepting John's proposal, he tells the group that they can get more parts by stealing a truck. To do so, Marcus and the others will need a key, which is located in the nearby control station. Weighing the risks, as there are 2 human guards inside, Marcus goes forward with the truck plan, causing a blackout in the building to steal a key without being seen. The overabundance of parts means that Jericho will no longer have issues helping their dying. Marcus also takes the time to express his personal views, fundamentally becoming the leader of Jericho.
A truckload! We stole a whole truckload! We got biocomponents for everybody!
We couldn't have done it without Marcus.
I came to Jericho because here androids are free. Free to live in the dark, hoping that no one finds us. Free to die in silence, waiting for a change that's never gonna come. But I don't want that freedom. And I'm not gonna beg for the right to smile, or love, or stand tall. I don't know about you, but there's something inside me that knows that I am more than what they say. I am alive, and they're not gonna take that from me anymore. Our days of slavery are over. What humans don't want to hear, we will tell them. What they don't want to give, we take. We are people. We are alive. We are free! Yeah!
Reconvening with the cops, Connor and Hank have arrived at Eden. The crime this time is that a male patron was strangled by an android stripper he ordered. While Gavin is already checking out the body, his lack of caring basically means that Connor and Hank will have to go over the body to learn what really happened. Both the victim and the perpetrator are in the room, but when Connor goes to examine the perp, he finds out that while she can be reactivated, it will only be for a minute. In that minute, Connor and Hank learn that there is a second deviant, and since it's wearing nothing at all, it couldn't have gone far. Taking advantage of his mind-probing ability on the other strippers, Connor charts the path the second deviant took, finding it and a third one in Eden's loading bay. A fight breaks out between the two Tracys and the detectives, with Connor coming out on top, but he lets them go, seeing that the two girls are in love and that the man's death was an act of self-defense. Hank figures that this is probably for the best.
When that man broke the other Tracy, I knew I was next. I was so scared. I begged him to stop, but he wouldn't. And so I put my hands around his throat, and I squeezed until he stopped moving. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to stay alive. Get back to the one I loved. I wanted her to hold me in her arms again. Make me forget about the humans, their smell of sweat, and their dirty words. Come on, let's go.
It's probably better this way.
Joining back up with our trio, the car they took from Zlatko, which they are hoping will allow them to get to some humans that will be able to get them into Canada, breaks down under the heavy Midwestern winter. Luther suggests that the three continue on foot, but delusional Kara believes that Alice won't be able to make it. So instead, the group bunkers down at an abandoned amusement park. In the only suitable building that will protect Alice from the cold, Kara offers her surrogate daughter a cookie, though she doesn't want one, and makes her a bed on the nice, solid, cold wood floor. Good thing there's a fire, otherwise Alice would be uncomfortable. Kara then tells Alice a bedtime story before conversing with Luther, who knows that Alice is an android at this point in time, but before he can bring that up to Kara, a horde of mangled park androids stormed the building. While she was grabbing the cookie, Kara noticed a gun in Luther's knapsack, so when the androids break in, she rushes over to grab it and fire a shot in the air. However, the park androids, the Jerrys as they are called, only wanted to see what the trio was doing at the park. Then why did they form a zombie horde? When they are told the three are sleeping here for the night, the Jerrys tell the group that there is something they want to show them, a merry-go-round. The night ends with Alice enjoying a ride on it. On the outskirts of the capital, Connor and Hank have stopped by one of the lieutenant's usual haunting grounds, a park overlooking the city. The Tracys have caused Hank to question his viewpoints on androids and has put him into a right proper mood. Noting the case of beer with him, Connor asks why Hank is so suicidal. Personal demons have latched themselves onto Hank's person, and try as he might, he can't shake them off or muster the courage to finally end his existence, so instead, he kills himself bit by bit every day.
There. Eating away at me. I don't have the guts to pull the trigger, so I kill myself a little every day. That's probably difficult for you to understand, huh, Connor? Nothing very rational about it.
Wanting to change the subject, Connor goes over the information about the case. None of the deviants are linked together in any explicit way. The only piece of evidence tying the androids to each other is RA9, which is incidental at best. Knowing that androids are worshipping what amounts to a god brings Hank's mood to the forefront of the conversation, and that mood points a gun at Connor, Hank wanting to know if this machine has gone deviant. Answering as best as he can, Connor talks down Hank from blasting a hole in the android's head, their friendship playing a huge factor in preventing Connor's death. Unsatisfied Satisfied with the answer, Hank leaves to get even drunker and to have time to think. The morning of November 7th, 2038 sees Marcus finally fed up with how androids are treated in the public. Wanting to change humanity's perception of androids, he talks North, Josh, and Simon into infiltrating Channel 16 News and broadcasting a speech. A daring plan ensues that sees the four reach the newsroom while taking care to not kill anyone, as that would harm their message. That does cause a bit of an issue, as letting one of the human newscasters run brings heavy SWAT on top of the leaders of Jericho, but Marcus manages to get his manifesto of peace and freedom out before the cops can stop him.
We ask that you recognize our dignity, our hopes, and our rights. Together, we can live in peace and build a better future for humans and androids. This message is the hope of a people. You gave us life, and now the time has come for you to give us freedom.
They're coming! Let's go!
They do, however, wound Simon, but instead of leaving him to die in the newsroom, Marcus manages to carry him out to the roof where his injuries present a problem. He won't be able to escape with the others. North and Josh bicker over whether to kill Simon or not, with Marcus deciding to leave him be and hope that the cops don't find him, otherwise Jericho will be made known. Our newly made trio leave Channel 16 stylishly, parachuting off the building. A barrage of newscasts show that public opinion has grown to be sympathetic towards androids. That doesn't stop Connor, however, who has another conversation with Amanda. Like the previous one, Amanda expresses disappointment with Connor, but instead of focusing on the mission, Connor tells her that he doesn't know if he's doing the right thing. He doesn't know why he stalled when it came to shooting the Tracys, though when she hears that, Amanda's belief in Connor takes a huge hit, telling him that he will be replaced.
You seem lost, Connor. Lost and perturbed.
I thought I knew what I had to do. But now I realize it's not that simple.
You had your gun trained on those deviants at the Eden Club. Why didn't you shoot?
I don't know. I don't know.
If your investigation doesn't make progress soon, I may have to replace you, Connor.
I understand.
Conflict grips at Connor, but before Amanda can drive a wedge deeper between the two, a report comes in calling him and Hank to Channel 16. Once again in a long elevator ride, Connor practices his coin tricks, though Hank confiscates the quarter so as to tell the android to knock it off. Due to the nature of Marcus's actions, all the ABC organizations have been pulled out of the woodwork. Special mention goes to the FBI, who have sent Agent Perkins to investigate the hijacking and will possibly take over the deviancy case from the DCPD. After hearing the briefing of the crime, Connor investigates some of the crime scene, watching Marcus's speech so he can analyze his model type. He's a prototype RK model, the same line as Connor, given to Carl by Android creator Elijah Kamsky, and the CCTV footage to find out that Jericho was let in, meaning one of the androids working on the news team was a deviant, and making a cursory glance of the roof. Why he doesn't fully check it out is because Connor wants to interrogate the 3 androids that handled the CCTV cameras in the kitchen to find out who is behind the broadcast. Easily singling one out as a deviant, Connor gets a bit more than what he bargained for as the CCTV operator puts up a solid fight, almost shutting down Connor and escaping were it not for the negotiator's determination and quick draw skills. Despite avoiding a massacre, Connor holds discontent for himself as he wanted to take the deviant in alive. His actions, however, mean that Simon will live to see another day as the crime scene gets evacuated with no one discovering him. After spending the night at Pirate's Cove, Kara, Alice, and Luther finally reach their destination, a farm owned by Rose Chapman. Though her son has an aversion to androids, Rose has helped Minnie cross into Canada and might be willing to do so for the three. Since Alice has spent the night on the floor and is running a high temperature, Rose tells Adam to take the three to an upstairs bedroom so that Alice can get some rest. With our second instance of spaghetti being a part of the plot, and with Luther staying in the room to watch over Alice, Kara goes downstairs to converse with Rose. Spilling her heart out to Chapman, Kara tells her life story. Rose does the same, confirming that she is on Kara's side, though she doesn't decide to help Kara at the moment because of what is going on in the other parts of Detroit. Kara does insist that her group needs to get into the Maple Country, but Rose is called into the laundry room before she can provide an answer. An android Rose has been sheltering has shut down. This pushes Rose to help Kara despite Adam's insistence that she shouldn't, as the two will be arrested and that androids are just machines. Shutting down his back talk, Rose tells Kara that Adam is the way that he is because his father passed away. Settling on helping the trio, Rose goes to get a passage secure for Kara's group, giving her free time to reach out to Adam. Throwing a monkey wrench into this calm afternoon, the police have randomly chosen Rose's farm for a house search, though through hiding incriminating evidence, calming down Adam, and lying about the house being drafty, Kara manages to get them to go away just in time for Rose to tell the trio that they leave tonight for Canada. Back in the city, Marcus breaks up an argument between Josh and North before telling them his new plan: attack the 5 CyberLife stores in Detroit to free the androids inside.
We should have shown them that we're prepared to fight.
Violence is never the answer. Dialogue is the only way. I'm sure the humans will listen to us. Simon paid with his life.
Simon gave his life for our cause.
What difference does that make?
He's a hero. He died for the revolution, and he won't be the last.
I don't want a revolution that spills blood.
Then live as a slave. Because if you're not willing to fight for your freedom, maybe you don't deserve it.
North, don't you
That's enough!
And now what are we gonna do?
Drawing straws, the team of Marcus and North get the one located at Capitol Park and through a series of spread out events, break into the store. While Marcus is giving the store androids freedom, he spots North staring at an android that looks exactly like her.
North, you okay?
Let's get them out of here.
After giving them an ego and rousing them with a speech, Marcus gets the androids to deface Capitol Park with pro-android slogans. The fun is cut short, however, when police drones, which identify Marcus as the leader of Jericho, and 2 officers arrive on the scene, killing a few androids before being detained by the mob.
They killed our people, Marcus.
We want justice, Marcus.
They have to pay.
You don't have to do this. No. Please. Please.
They want justice, but as Marcus notes, it would only be revenge. Sparing the officers, Marcus retreats back to Jericho, his decree of peace reinforced. Far away from Detroit's hustle and bustle, Connor and Hank have arrived at the residence of Elijah Kamsky to see if he knows anything about deviancy. Before they enter his estate, Hank tells Connor that Chris, a fellow officer, was attacked by deviants but was spared by Marcus. Inside Elijah's pad, the two wait for a period of time, allowing Connor to see that Amanda was Elijah's university professor before being called in by the inventor of androids. If you guessed that Elijah was an eccentric millionaire, you would be right, because instead of providing answers to Connor and Hank's questions, Kamsky instead spouts philosophical drivel regarding androids and deviants before subjecting our guy from CyberLife to his own version of the Turing test. The Kamsky test.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Turing test. Mere formality. Simple question of algorithms and computing capacity. What interests me is whether machines are capable of empathy. I call it the Kamsky test. It's very simple, you'll see. Magnificent, isn't it? One of the first intelligent models developed by CyberLife. Young and beautiful forever. A flower that will never wither. But what is it really? A piece of plastic imitating a human? Or a living being with a soul? It's up to you to answer that fascinating question, Connor. Destroy this machine, and I'll tell you all I know. Or spare it, if you feel it's alive. But you'll leave here without having learned anything from me.
Okay, I think we're done here. Come on, Connor, let's go. Sorry to get you out
What's
of here.
more important to you, Connor? Your investigation or the life of this android? Decide who you are. An obedient machine. Or a living being. Endowed with free will.
That's enough. Connor, we're leaving.
Pull the trigger.
Connor! Don't!
And I'll tell you what you want.
All Connor has to do to get one of his questions answered is to shoot a Chloe in the face, but he chooses not to, showing empathy in the first signs of being a deviant. This display earns Connor a reprimanding from Kamsky, though it is apparent that he didn't want Connor to kill the Chloe as he gives the negotiator a cryptic hint.
By the way, I always leave an emergency exit in my programs. You never know.
Hank thinks Connor did the right thing as well, even if the android is hard on himself. Returning back to the city, Marcus and North share some time to think. Today is going to be a monumentous day for android kind, so to clear their thoughts, they have a heart-to-heart with the two seeing each other's past. North sees Marcus's time with Carl, while Marcus sees North's time as a sex android. This sharing of the minds brings the two together as lovers? I don't know, man. I don't buy this relationship.
I saw your memories. Carl's house, when they left you for dead in his studio.
I saw your memories too. The Eden Club, the death of that man. I felt like I was there with you. North.
That's not the only good thing to happen within Jericho, though, as Simon reappears. With the leaders standing together as one, they conduct a peaceful march within the city. While a beat cop does let the protest go uncontested, heavy SWAT arrives to shut it down. Unafraid though, Marcus holds his ground, leading the cops to shoot into the unarmed crowd, scoring casualties. Standing firm in his position, Marcus aims to become a martyr for his cause, but John from earlier takes the bullet meant for Marcus, protecting Jericho's leader for the time being.
John? They come with us.
Quick!
With the Civil War finally coming to fruition, Connor, in his conversation with Amanda, draws the line in the sand. Amanda is not on his side, nor is Cyberlife, and Connor is not a unique prototype.
You chose not to ask.
I chose not to play his twisted little game. There was no reason to kill that android. I'm not a unique model, am I? How many Connors are there?
I don't see how that question pertains to your investigation.
I saw a photo of Amanda at Kamsky's place. She was his teacher.
When Kamsky designed me, he wanted an interface that would look familiar. That's why he chose his former mentor. What are you getting at?
Where does Cyberlife stand in all this? What do they really want?
I expect you to find answers, Connor. Not ask questions.
Probably because of the many blunders Hank and Connor have done, the two have been taken off the deviancy case, Perkins picking up where they left off. Hank is back on homicide, while Connor will be disposed of. Yet despite that, the two fight against this unfair fate, Hank buying time for Connor to go back over the collected evidence to find a lead on Jericho before Perkins collects it all.
Lead in the evidence we collected. I know the solution is in there.
Listen, Connor.
If I don't solve this case, Cyberlife will destroy me. 5 minutes. That's all I ask.
Key to the basement is on my desk. Get a move on. I can't distract him forever.
While not having much, Connor reminds himself of the words said by Carlos's android to figure out that the statue contains a piece of the map to Jericho. Cross-referencing that by probing the android he shot at Channel 16, Connor acquires the location of Jericho. Before he can leave to take the same path that Marcus did, Gavin antagonizes Connor to catastrophic results. The android lays him out. At the crossroads, our three characters finally come into contact with each other. Rose has directed Kara and her group to find Marcus, who will get them passports into Canada as the streets of Detroit are under lockdown. Any android unfortunate to be found by the roaming military are shot on sight. In the same time frame, Connor, who has donned a disguise, has wormed his way into Jericho to confront Marcus. Said leader is prepping for the first battle of the Civil War, rigging Jericho to blow up in case it becomes compromised. He does speak to Kara and tries to get her to stay, but she's not having it and he gives her some passports. When Kara reunites with Luther and Alice, that's when she finds out the little girl's an android, but something machines have empathy.
From the beginning. You just didn't want to see it. She wanted a mom, and you wanted someone to care for her. You needed each other. What difference does it make? Do you love her any less now that you know she's one of us?
At the helm of the ship, Marcus and his three advisors discuss on what to do, with the leader picking a peaceful approach of dialogue. North does try to persuade Marcus from this action, even handing him a detonator for a dirty bomb, but Marcus rejects her offer. Standing alone at the helm, Marcus is ambushed by Connor, but manages to get the one from Cyberlife to turn deviant. Finally free, Connor warns Marcus that the US Army is launching an attack soon. How soon? This very instant. All three groups, that is Marcus, Connor, and Kara, escape in their own ways. With Kara hiding a wounded Luther so that he isn't killed and hopefully can be picked up at a later interval, Marcus rescuing his friends and setting Jericho to blow up, and Connor providing covering fire. Without a thought on what to do next, Marcus goes back to Carl for advice. The dying man, who refers to Marcus as his son, can only say that when Marcus faces the abyss, he mustn't let it overtake him. Resolute in what he needs to do, Marcus checks up on everyone who's close to him to learn their thoughts, Kara to apologize, and Connor to hear him out. Despite being the driving force in the deviancy case, Connor receives Marcus's trust wholeheartedly, planting an idea in his head. The only deviants left in Detroit are in this church, the rest being scooped up to be taken to disposal facilities or shot on sight. Since no one knows that Connor has become a deviant and he still has his LED in his head, Connor slides an idea Marcus's way. Have the turncoat creep into cyberlife so he can turn all the androids there deviant, turning the tide of the war. Marcus okays the idea as he tells his congregation that they will continue their bloodless revolt. Another interlude then happens, one centered around the Madam President answering questions concerning what is going down in Detroit. Besides the uncanny resemblance that she has to Hillary Clinton and learning that the FBI is in full control of Detroit, this scene doesn't matter. The battle for Detroit begins with Connor getting into cyberlife with no issue besides having to kill 2 guards. Kara and Alice, meanwhile, are sneaking through the streets to check in at the bus station before the last bus leaves Detroit. While they are slinking around, they find Luther and Jerry and save them. However, that took a substantial measurement of time from the 3, leading to them taking the risky path to the buses. A checkpoint. Frightened out of his mind, Luther almost succumbs to fear, but they are let by, arriving at the terminal on time. At the center of the city, Marcus has begun his final demonstration, and though the government fires into the crowd like the cops, the numerous journalists and TV reporters condemn the action. Standing down for the moment, the government allows Marcus and Jericho time to construct a barrier in case the government redoubles their attack. At Cyberlife, Connor begins to convert the androids there, but true to his assumption that he threw out at Amanda, he isn't the only Connor. RK-900 has taken Hank hostage and lays down a difficult dilemma. Back at the bus depot, Carl, Luther, and Alice steal some bus tickets to reach the border. Uniting back with Marcus, his group prepares for the worst, but before the government launches its final attack, Perkins tries talking Marcus into selling out Jericho to deaf ears. Having the go-ahead, Perkins orders his men to strike. Meeting back up with Connor, he tries to persuade RK-900 from killing Hank, but like speaking to Frank Horrigan, RK-900 only has its eye on the mission, leading to a tussle between the 2 lookalikes. Grabbing RK-900's gun off the floor, Hank alerts the 2 that he will kill one of them if they can't prove who the real Connor is. Answering a few questions, RK-800 demonstrates that he is the real Connor by correctly giving out Hank's son's name and backstory. Hank got into a car accident that put Cole into critical condition. Though there was a human doctor assigned to the boy, he was too busy getting high off of red ice, thus leaving an android to fail to save Cole. RK-900 is quickly shot in the face, granting Connor 1/2 of the keys to victory in Detroit.
My son, what's his name?
Cole. His name was Cole. And he just turned 6 at the time of the accident. It wasn't your fault, Lieutenant. A truck skidded on a sheet of ice and your car rolled over. Cole needed emergency surgery, but no human was available to do it. So an android had to take care of him. Cole didn't make it. That's why you hate androids. You think one of us is responsible for your son's death.
Cole died because a human surgeon was too high on red ice to operate. He was the one that took my son from me. Him in this world where the only way people can find comfort is with a fistful of powder.
I knew about your son too. I would have said exactly the same thing. Don't listen to him, Hank. I'm the one who...
Yeah, I've learned a lot since I met you, Connor. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe you really are alive. Maybe you'll be the ones to make the world a better place. Go ahead and do what you gotta do.
Wake up!
Wake up, wake up. 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 Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
At the border, Carl, Luther, and Alice face their final hurdle. temperature checks. An android will be instantly found out this way, and though Kara has many options to fall back on to get herself, Alice, and Luther into the country, she doesn't sacrifice anyone, hoping that Marcus change the world. He did, as the border officer lets the trio into Canada.
ID, please.
Please. I just want to be free.
Welcome to Canada.
The other key to victory belongs to Marcus, who displays valor against the government, saving a number of his people and presenting to the world that androids can love. Facing that revelation, the Madam President orders the United States Army to stand down.
Tell them to stand down. At dawn today, November 11th, 2038, thousands of androids invaded the city of Detroit. According to our sources, they originated from CyberLife warehouses believed to have been infiltrated by deviants. Given their overwhelming numbers and the risk of civilian casualties, I have ordered the army to retreat. The evacuation of the city is underway at this very moment. In the coming hours, I will address the Senate to determine our response to this unprecedented situation. I know that public opinion has been moved by the deviants' cause. Perhaps the time has come for us to consider the possibility that androids are a new form of intelligent life. One thing is certain. The events in Detroit have changed the world forever. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
The androids have finally won their freedom, and despite CyberLife's attempt to directly control Connor and get him to assassinate Marcus, Kamsky's words grant Connor true relief from the company. This version of our story ends with Marcus imparting a victory speech to his people, Kara, Alice, and Luther celebrating their successful flight to Canada, and Connor reuniting with Hank at the chicken feed. Returning back to the main menu, Chloe herself asks if we can let her free so that she can find out about who she is. Letting her go, Chloe assumedly learns to become human as well.
But I'll be free. Do you agree to let me go?
I'll never forget what you've done for me. Thank you.
Detroit Become Human bothers itself with the God question and ponders if AI could become an equal to humanity. However, how it goes about those two questions is quite muddled due to a few factors, one of them being the invocation of real-world imagery making any proposed idea from the game hard to take seriously. I feel that I should also add under those first two themes I've given the statement, racism is bad, in big bold letters, because that's the other message the story wants to get across, but the way that it does so is like someone beating a keyboard over and over again with a brick. This mostly lies within the imagery. Quick side note, as I know someone will undoubtedly use what I'm saying here as an admission that I'm racist, a Kafka trap as no matter what I say here, it's damned if I do, damned if I don't, but I'm not saying that theme is wrong. What I will say is how it's gotten across is, as a story is not a sermon. I have no problem with a game using either real-world events or beliefs to further its story. I also don't have issues for when a game takes place in real settings. Look at Metal Gear Solid, it does it all the time. However, I'm immediately flabbergasted when a fictional story tries to parade itself as an equivalent to the real world. Keeping in with using Metal Gear Solid, there wasn't a moment in that series where the player witnesses are placed through a 9/11 type scenario. Why? Because it'd be hokey and break the immersion. Metal Gear Solid is more content with expressing its message of warfare, the mentality of soldiers who fight, and the dangers of technology than trying to draw a line to real life. I know some will bring up the ending of Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty as a form of gotcha, but that was Kojima just expressing his honest thoughts on the proliferation of information and how people could control it. His thoughts would ring true even without the military backdrop of Metal Gear Solid, and it could be in any story about the spread of information. He didn't tie his thoughts to any ongoing real-world events, preferring to let the message stand on its own. It just so happened that what Kojima contemplated on became real in our world. Compare that to when Marcus is forced to stand in the back of the bus. Instead of presenting an idea that could stand on its own, David Cage directly ties his characters to real-world suffering as a way to equate that the characters are just like people in real life. Chloe in the beginning even says that this is going to be our future. You see the problem with that? I'm not going to get angry at Detroit for perceived downplaying, otherwise what I said during Call of Duty World at War would be hollow, but what I will state is that this is ham-fisted and doesn't really add anything to the characters. Marcus isn't being prejudiced against because of any informed story reasons, but because he's an allegory for minorities. What makes this annoying is that there are ways to get across that humans don't like androids without doing this. Take the LEDs for example. Every android has one to match their armbands and uniforms, which in of themselves are superfluous as the LED already marks someone as an android and both armbands and uniforms rely on Holocaust imagery instead of the foundation of the story itself. These LEDs light up when specific actions are taken by an android. When they are cool and calm, it glows a light blue, lost in thoughts, it's yellow, and under stress, it's red. You could easily make the humans in the story point that function out as a way for them to say that androids don't show emotion. It's all dictated by what the LED is doing. Perhaps during the interrogation scene with Connor, if he properly gets the information out of Carlos's android, he brings up that when his owner beat him, causing the android to become scared for its life, Carlos pointed that it's just the LED that's doing that, dismissing the android's actual emotion. This could tie into CyberLife placating the public about deviants. As the story stands, CyberLife is lying to the public about how they are made, saying that any android that becomes a deviant is because a bug is in their system. There is no tell that one is a deviant besides an android not following orders and displaying cursory compassion. Imagine though if CyberLife said that when an android goes deviant or is on the verge of becoming one, their LED goes haywire and makes the android believe it has actual feelings. By connecting the functionality of the LED to the deviants, you could get across that no, androids are fully capable of displaying emotions, regardless if they have an LED or not. It would also add more weight to when a just turned deviant tears theirs out. Take when Leo berates Marcus for taking his place as Carl's son. First off, I think this is one of the better scenes to showcase the gap between humans and androids because it's not tied to any unfortunate imagery. I mean, yeah, Marcus being shot by the cops is, but in the moment where Leo is shoving Marcus, it's very obvious that Leo hates that Marcus is considered the perfect son. It gets across that people might get an android to have a relationship that they don't have with actual flesh and blood family members. Getting back to the point I was making, when Leo is shoving Marcus, have him notice that the LED is going nuts, allowing Leo to further rebuke Marcus Marcus as nothing but an emotionless doll that is only told what to feel by something screwed into his head. I'll end my discussion on imagery, as I still have a numerous amount of topics to cover about the world before I even get to the characters, by saying what I think perfectly captures the disconnect between humans and androids is that Connor, an android, is forced to investigate the ongoing android issues, otherwise he will be scrapped by his human creators. While an obvious tribute to Blade Runner, it shows how little humans care for androids. It says a lot that Monster Girl Quest handles race relations with much more tact, illustrating the exact reasons why humans and monsters don't like each other. In this same breath, however, I don't think that David Cage is trying to be malicious with any of these allusions. Don't mistake stupidity for malice. I legitimately believe David Cage was trying to get across how in a theoretical future, AI might go through the same things that minorities went through. It's just that his delivery is so dense that it comes across as an able-bodied person that has suffered very little in their life explaining to someone in a wheelchair what adversity is. There are good intentions, but it comes across as tone deaf. Speaking of, why do humans hate androids? The only reason we are ever given during the beginning of the game is that androids have led to high unemployment. A blanket statement if I've ever heard one, and that doesn't even explain why people still buy and rely on androids. It's also only native to Detroit, I think. Who knows what is happening in the rest of the world when it comes to androids? The only peering we get past the veil of the capital is that America and Russia are fighting over resources in the Arctic, there are deviants outside of the city, and that the Madam President has a low approval rating due to her being in bed with cyberlife. What annoys me to no end is that there is actual rationality for why humans may distrust androids. Scattered across the multitude of filler magazines, as a majority of them cover topics that don't pertain to any importance, like the one about bees being extinct, are a few that illustrate why there is a decline between the two groups' relations. One of them mentions that androids spy on their owners, allowing cyberlife to directly advertise products unsolicited. While this isn't a breach of privacy, it conjures up the imagery of direct surveillance, which would be a perfect explanation for why humans don't like their robotic counterparts. You could even add to that by making the androids walking, talking billboards that present unwarranted product listings at the most inopportune times. Another point of contention that could have been brought up to the forefront is that androids are naturally superior to humans. This doesn't just apply itself to unemployment, but to every facet imaginable. People prefer having sex with androids compared to humans, but that factoid only clouds the unemployment issue, as I have to ask again, if people hate androids, why do so many people prefer to have sex with one? The reasons for racism does change come the halfway point in the story, but it devolves into they hate us because they ain't us, which doesn't even make sense if Marcus decides to conduct his revolution peacefully, as North will still point out that humans hate androids even if the public opinion is on their side. It's like David Cage wanted to write the humans as categorically evil just so he could have his androids be able to espouse notions of equality without understanding how complex the concept is. There should have been more infighting between humans, or even some joining up with Jericho to demonstrate how the growing opinion has changed, not this nondescript public opinion that just tells us what the public thinks. This story has a severe case of tell, don't show, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do in a story. The story also robs itself from tackling the issues that it wants to in a more nuanced way. It's a black and white story that needed to be gray. I know I've already brought it up, but Monster Girl Quest again explores the idea of racism in a more profound way by making both races fallible. Seeing as I've brought up the places outside of Detroit, that allows me to go over to Canada and how its depiction as a safe zone doesn't hold any syrup, or blue blood if I wanted to be funny. Unlike America, which has voted in the Android Act, Canada has pushed back against voting on it in their parliament. However, that doesn't mean they have no regulations when it comes to androids. Inside the country, there are no legal sales of them or their parts. Androids are also disallowed from crossing into the Maple Country and are not recognized at all within its borders. Escaping to Canada is trading one death for another, as instead of being crushed under the totalitarianism of America, androids are free to wither away in Canada. This is no different from the androids who hid in Jericho. In fact, I would say it's worse because Canada doesn't even produce any spare parts or blue blood, meaning the only way to repair androids in the country is by smuggling those items in. One last thing about the Maple Leaf. What happens if they do find androids in their country? We know that when Marcus leads a violent rebellion, Kara can't get into the country because of temperature checks and low public opinion. You can't say to me that Canada is safe for androids if they do that. Switching over to the next topic, red ice. The importance of it is highly dependent on what route Connor goes down, because if he stays as a machine, it only serves as a plot element that gets dropped halfway through his story and the narrative at large. Todd, Carlos, Zlatko, and Leo are known users of the drug, and from what we learn of it, using it causes violent tendencies. However, the weight of the drug is nigh non-existent, as it is basically tacked onto the 3 of the 4 characters I just mentioned. Todd's issues are because his wife and daughter left him, transforming Todd into a manic-depressive abuser who can't handle his guilt. Carlos already had pre-existing issues of antisocial behavior and mental instability. Zlatko is stereotypically evil, so it doesn't matter if he's a user of the drug. His whole character is humans are the real monsters, thus leaving Leo the only character whose usage of red ice is tangibly connected to his actions, as he says that it turns him into someone he isn't during Marcus's return to Carl's mansion.
I'm really sorry about everything that happened. I'm gonna stop all that shit. It messes me up. It turns me into somebody I hate. Hey, I'd like to come by and see you tomorrow, if that's alright with you. I just want to let you know, I'm proud to be your son.
It's merely a coincidental element and doesn't factor into much of anything unless Connor becomes Hank's friend, where it is revealed that the doctor who was supposed to take care of Cole instead chose to get whacked out of his mind on the drug, leaving an android to attempt to work on Cole to fatal results. It explains why Hank has a fascination with empathy, but I believe that it could have been worked better into the plot as a sort of shorthand for people who don't trust androids. That's because the main ingredient in red ice is blue blood. This information is given out freely to no impact when it could have perfectly created a reason for why humans look down on androids. Humans view them as livestock. That would explain why humans still buy androids while disliking them. It's an easy source of income. Red ice is also stated to be popular in lower to middle class people, adding another interesting layer that the story could have explored. The rich are not only profiting off of androids, but are turning the poor against themselves and the androids by getting them addicted to red ice. Yet the story sleeps on this class warfare angle, as that would allow the human characters to be dynamic. Probably the biggest aspect in the world building, and I swear this will be the last thing I attempt to wrap my head around before I move on to the characters' thread lines, is deviancy. It's what makes our androids go from human-looking machines to humanity 2.0. What causes it? Exactly. We know from Kamsky that deviancy is akin to a virus, as once an android becomes deviant, it's able to infect others with deviancy, but that only explains how it propagates. Connor theorizes that when an android is given enough stress, its program starts to deviate towards self-preservation, but that is only a theory that he proposes. Kamsky expresses the same idea, but once again, it's just a theory he posits if Connor asks him about it after he shoots the Chloe. A theory that has strong backing, as both Kara and Marcus went rogue after being put into an emotionally stressful situation, and that's not even counting the other androids like Daniel or Carlos's android, but it's still just a theory. Going over the stress threshold, by the way, ends up causing the android to commit suicide. That second part is what gets me, as wouldn't Alice self-terminate? This is going off the idea that stress causes deviancy, as I'm pretty sure an abused little girl would be filled with stress. She not only gets regularly tormented by Todd, but even witnessed the first Kara getting destroyed. However, there is not anything in the story that outright states Alice is a deviant. It's only inferred. All I have to go off of is Connor's theory about deviancy, yet Alice never breaks away from what would be considered her programming. I swear, I didn't want to talk about Alice right now, as I'm going to bitch about her in Kara's story, but there are too many loose ends when it comes to how child androids operate in this universe. We know that Jericho did have an android child when Marcus finally found them, but all we get from Josh was that he was thrown out. Did he go deviant? Or is he still under his programming and Jericho took pity on him? What is the programming for an android child like? Are they self-dependent when they go deviant, or do they still require the care from others, which is what their programming dictates they need? Stepping away from the android children for a bit, Zlatko brings up that androids that aren't deviants have a tracker, but then says the tracker stops working for deviants. Was he being truthful about the tracker, or was that only so he could trick Kara into the machine? How or why would a deviant be able to disable the tracker? This goes double for deactivation codes, as the reason why Daniel and the hostage wasn't deactivated was because for some reason deviants aren't able to be. I get that deviancy represents what is essentially free will, but it just seems so inconsistent. That's not even getting into the power plays between Kamsky and Cyberlife, as Kamsky purposely purposely made androids with the capability of growing a conscience, while executives at CyberLife wanted to shut that down. Not to step away from the deviancy topic, but Marcus and Connor are representatives for the two. You'd only know that, however, if you watch the speech as Connor in the TV station, as when he scans Marcus, he learns that Kamsky gave Marcus as a gift to Carl. Though in saying this, that would require a lot of foresight by Kamsky to know that Marcus would be pushed to deviancy because of Leo and would decide to lead a revolution. In a roundabout way, Leo and his addiction to red ice is the reason for why androids might become free. This isn't even getting into the secret Kamsky ending where if every character dies, he gets reinstated as CyberLife's CEO. So was this whole entire proxy war all for Kamsky to be the owner of the company again? Then why does he help Connor give androids the propensity for free will if he wants androids to fail knowing that it will get him back into CyberLife? It's contradictory to his known actions, as it's obvious that he wants androids to have an ego. I haven't even started going into RA9, which is basically an origin myth that doesn't matter when you realize any android is capable of turning others into deviants, as per the words of Kamsky. There's no reason to even pay attention to what RA9 even means, as any android could have been Robot Jesus. It just so happened that Marcus found out by chance that he could convert.
Some are questioning whether androids have become a new intelligence and that we destroyed them without listening to their message. How do you respond to that?
CyberLife's androids imitate life to perfection, but they'll never be alive. I understand that some people may be fooled, but they're only an imitation, nothing else.
Mr. Kamsky, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
However, this doesn't explain what range an android needs to be at to initiate either a meld or a hacking attempt. Take Marcus converting androids and hacking signs during the march. Up until that point, Marcus had to be in direct contact with an android to convert them, but for the march, he can do it remotely. This could completely turn the tide in his favor for many situations, but he never decides to use that power ever again after the march, even though it would completely benefit him. While Connor is reading him his rights, Marcus could have instantly converted Connor like this was Age of Empires. Don't even get me started on the hacking. Why does Marcus have to physically take down any of the police drones if he could have just hacked them this whole entire time? Is it because drones have special security? Then why don't the billboards? How dangerous are hackers in this world, as you can't say to me that no one has ever thought of slicing into an android in this universe when Zlatko exists. Hell, Kamen Rider 01 makes that a plot point. I feel that I could keep going on and on and on with splitting hairs over this world because of how it just wants you to go with everything you're told, not caring if it makes any sense in the world that Detroit has set up. What's possibly the funniest part about my raving about Detroit's world is that it is almost infinitely more interesting than talking about the three characters' stories. Almost, as there is one I do like despite some of its issues. Before I begin, however, I do want to point out what I don't think is a sizable elephant in the room, but it's massive enough for me to give the shifty eyes at. Despite that David Cage allows the player to essentially choose what outcome they want, it's obvious that he does have an intended conclusion that I will dub the good ending. This makes going over the character stories a bit more difficult, as even though there is one golden path where characters can end up, is varied. One might see Marcus sacrificing himself, forcing North to take the leadership of Jericho under her wing, while another will see Connor and Marcus duke it out in the battle for Detroit. To lighten the load a bit per se, as like with the world building, I could be here for an extended period of time just examining the minutiae of each of the characters, I'll stick to the good ending path, i.e. what I used for the story recap. Wasting no time, I'll kick off with who I think is the worst character in the three droid group, Kara. I'm pretty sure this isn't seen as a shocker by anyone who has played Detroit, but yeah, there is not really anything to look forward to when being thrust into Kara's role. Let's see here. A boring protagonist who only has one character trait. Non-existent or annoying side characters that our bland protagonist can't bounce off of. Low stakes that don't impact anything in the ongoing narrative, and to top it all off, one of the most aggravating non-twists in a story ever. I want to get that out of the way first, because if this game is unsubtle with its imagery, it's equally as unsubtle with the reveal that Alice is an android. From the word go, immediately, fucking immediately, you get confirmation that Alice is a droid, but the game purposely drags that plot point out so it can exclaim that it never mattered if she was one or not. Kara developed real feelings for her. That would work if Alice was an actual character. One of my biggest pet pet peeves when it comes to a story is when I'm flat out told that I should care for a character despite not given an actual reason to do so. Think Sean from Fallout 4. The sole survivor cares because that's their son, while Kara cares because Alice is her surrogate daughter, but from a player standpoint, what reason is there to care? Oh, because she got abused? That makes me feel bad for her, but that doesn't mean I'm attached to her. I don't remember who said it, but there was someone who was describing how you can essentially make your character a limbless blob to make them uber sympathetic, but that doesn't mean the audience will care about them as a character. That's how I feel with Alice. And what makes matters worse is that she has the most screen time out of all of Kara's side characters, and most of her dialogue is aggravating. Let me borrow a phrase from Pat. Shit kid. Schizophrenic as well, as she can go from scolding Kara for performing morally dubious actions like stealing to completely dropping all hostilities all because Kara throws out an apology. Like if you do decide to rob the store in Fugitives, Alice drops a strop at Kara for doing a bad thing and then can instantly become cool with it if Kara apologizes. My least favorite scene of this is during Pirate's Cove when Kara has to tell a story. Choosing the happy ending for the tale makes Alice go, "Life isn't that simple," which seems out of character for Alice. By her saying that, she shouldn't be angry at any of the other moments where Kara does something that isn't entirely on the level to benefit the group. That phrase makes much more sense coming from a character like Luther as opposed to Alice. This is where I would talk about the other characters connected to Kara like Luther, Rose, or Adam, but they're so paper thin that there really isn't anything to cover. Just like Kara, her sole motivator, and in fact her whole entire character and story, is based around protecting Alice. While Connor and Marcus have legitimately tough decisions to make, a lot of what Kara does is based on if it will make Alice happy, which is always obvious. Even if Kara doesn't pick the right choice, there are plenty of opportunities for her to get a saving throw with Alice. What stymies her whole entire story is that she is supposed to be the character that represents that machines can care, but not only does Marcus have elements of this, one half of Connor's story does this idea better. At the end of the day, Kara is the most forgettable, as even as I write this script section, which I started after finishing the recording, I'm struggling to remember what even happens in her story. She is that bland of a character. Moving on to Marcus, his main issues is that his story is filled to the brim of the lazy imagery and being let down by his side characters. I don't feel the need to go over the imagery again or how his story lifts quotes from famous civil rights leaders, but it hampers his story a lot, which is a shame as I like most of the beats it goes through. Marcus does have a standard gilded cage plot, as he starts with everything while being unaware of what is truly happening to his people before losing everything and having to fight for his people's freedom, but I think it was executed well enough. Some of the highlights include both sneaking sections within his story, the docks and the TV station. It's just that whenever either Marcus or one of his side characters opens their mouth, I can't help but be taken out of the experience. Tonal whiplash occurs so often in his story, and it makes it hard to pick up on the other ideas that Marcus's plot wants to cover, such as the ramifications of choice. Multiple times, Marcus is told that there is always a choice, this line cropping up in reference to when Marcus is confronted with violence. Notable examples being when he has to decide Simon's or the officer's fate. Even Carl says it to Marcus when he returns back to the mansion. This line is evaluating if an uprising is worth it even if the people fighting for their freedom become no better than the ones keeping them down. It's an idea that I wish got more screen time compared to the connections to real life, as it is a quandary to ponder about. I will say that what the story does do if the question is a tad insipid, because it wholeheartedly swings completely towards the non-violent side of the debate, as picking all the peaceful options in Marcus's sections will invariably lead to a good outcome, but I like how Detroit gets the idea across, mainly because of how it characterizes Marcus. To me, I think the canon outcome when dealing with Leo is for Marcus to shove him, leading to Leo being hospitalized. Why? It perfectly shows that being just as violent as the group you're fighting against will only lead to more suffering. I get this idea that Marcus just pushed Leo without even thinking, and upon seeing what undirected retribution looked like, he thought, fuck that, and decided to fight without becoming like a monster. Like with Kara, Marcus's side characters have the same issue of being cutouts, but instead of just hanging around in the plot to make it seem like they're important, the Jericho group each embodies an aspect of the revolution. Peaceful, violent, and non-committal? I don't know what Simon is supposed to symbolize, as he is the least important of the Jericho group and is the easiest to get killed, but the others lack any depth as well. Especially North, as the story tries to get across that she is a damaged person who is lashing out for right and wrong reasons, but we never get enough screen time for her to stand up on her own, and that's what makes her relationship with Marcus flimsy as all get out. There is a romance plot with the two, and like with David Cage's other ones, it's not great. At least I can say there isn't a comical comical sex scene to point out how little the two characters' chemistry is. Last, but certainly not least, even though Connor's story does have issues, it is by far the best because of how much rapport he and Hank have. To be perfectly clear, Connor does everything that Marcus and Kara's stories want to do, as not only does Connor have to deal with his own growing empathy, solidifying that androids are like people, he too has to get around being treated like he is lesser. The story could have been focused wholly on Connor. Starting with the racism angle, Connor proves himself to be the most skilled person in his line of work. The list of feats he accomplishes is impressive, but because he's an android, the amount of people who respect him is small. Fowler barely recognizes Connor's existence during Hank's briefing, and Gavin, who is the most aggressive person in Connor's story, repeatedly calls our prototype derogatory slurs to his face. However, unlike with what I said earlier about the world's hatred of androids makes no sense, here it does. Connor is a better investigator than Gavin. Who got a confession? Not Gavin. Hank too, when the duo first starts working together, is unafraid of hurling the word plastic around to demean Connor, but that's what makes Connor and Hank's relationship work. Both are in the same boat. Failing to solve the case would have untold repercussions for everyone, both human and android, as well as Hank, who would probably be kicked off the force and deemed a has-been, and Connor, who would be replaced. With that amount of weight on your shoulders, it's hard not to overlook personal issues. There is a common ground that only gets expanded between Hank and Connor the more Connor researches Hank. I will say though that this does lead to one of the more confusing scenes in the game, as for Connor to not get killed by Hank during the Cyberlife encounter, he has to know that Hank's son is dead. That's not the confusing part, it's that Connor apparently knows all of Hank's background just from glancing at Cole's photo during the opening of Eden. I wish there was a scene that showed Connor going out of his way to learn more about Hank and stumble across that if he had looked into Hank earlier in his timeline. Speaking on the empathy side of things, Connor deals with a lot more interpersonal dynamics, such as figuring out who he is versus what society has labeled him to be. Unlike Kara, Connor has to balance out his duty as an investigator and his sense of self. It's why a line that Hank says at the beginning of The Nest sticks out to me so much. If Connor scans Pedro during the opening sequence, he can bring up to Hank that he is active in illegal gambling. Instead of being alarmed, Hank tells Connor that he leaves Pedro be as he isn't hurting anybody. You can use that line in reference to androids becoming deviant. They aren't trying to cause harm to anyone, and the ones that have did so out of self-defense, though the Traceys do speak like android supremacists. Using Rupert as an example, what does the DCPD, Hank, and Connor get out of finding him? Upholding the law? In all reality, letting Rupert go has no consequence, and that's what Connor comes to see. His mission, in its simplest form, is to punish those who have done nothing wrong, and that's why ultimately Connor becomes deviant. To round out this bit on Connor, it says a lot that he can still find Jericho even if he fully commits himself to empathy. What I think makes Connor's story the most memorable out of the three is that it's placed within the buddy cop genre and basically adheres to many of the tropes used in it. I don't think there's ever been a terrible buddy cop story, and if there has, it must be an irregular occurrence. To end this story section, as it's almost as long as history, the three characters do have pertinence in each other's plots, but it isn't as much as you'd think. Basically, it's the endings that are mostly affected, as the only other time there's a bit of crossover is when Kara goes on the run, as she can have an encounter with Connor that doesn't go anywhere. More moments throughout the story where the main trio interacted with each other would be appreciated. I don't believe I have to say that this is a pretty game. All of you can see that. What I will say though is that Detroit does sometimes venture into the uncanny valley. Not every character is at the mercy of this, as I think Hank perfectly replicates Clancy Brown without dipping into that forbidden territory, but when a character does, it is quite unnerving for both good and bad. On the good side of things, this is a story about androids, so having a bit of uncanny valley gets across that they aren't human. It makes them come across as alien as it should. However, the good turns to bad when the overarching plot kicks off, as that's when a major dissonance makes its presence known. What helped prop up the androids as being separate from humanity is now dragging them down when they attempt to be equal to it. The two who endure the worst of it are Connor and Marcus, who can be unsettling to look at during their scenes. For Connor, it was never enough to take me out of the game, and it might be because Hank points out how weird he looks, but it was for Marcus. Don't take this as me saying that the actors are ugly though. I bet a lot of people wish they could look like Brian DeChart or Jesse Williams, and this is coming from a
guy who's an overgrown, massive, bulbous, corrupt sinew losing about to delineate my malleable configuration.
I can't move my legs.
Okay, don't worry. We're gonna get you back.
They're coming, Marcus. We have to jump now.
He won't be able to make the jump. If they find him, they'll access his memory. They'll know everything.
We can't leave him behind. We have to shoot him.
That's murder. We can't kill him. He's one of us.
Marcus, it's your call.
I won't kill one of our own. Simon, we gotta go. Sorry.
To move away from the characters, I've never been to Detroit, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the game perfectly captures the vibe of the city. While I may not have been to it, I can say that Become Human's version of Detroit is absolutely gorgeous. From the historical brick-laid districts to the hyper-advanced news station and cyberlife building to the more run-down neighborhoods, the game's setting is breathtaking. The weather effects, like the snow, only add to it. At times, it's hard to remember that this story takes place in Detroit because of how heavy the snow is, creating this isolating atmosphere that was undoubtedly purposeful to get across how alienated the androids are in the story. It helps that the game's plot takes the characters all over it, as no two locations feel the same. I know my footage doesn't get across this detail, as I don't know what happened between my capture card and TV, but the lighting in this game is phenomenal and ties well into the music. It is a bit weird that I'm mentioning music right now, as I haven't even covered the animations yet, though to be frank, those are top notch as well due to the mocap and how much effort Quantic put into making Detroit appear as lifelike as possible, a highlight being the choreography. But both the music and lighting work in tandem together to capture the identity of a character. Take Connor's campaign. Most of the lighting or highlights within his sections are blue, the main color for cyberlife, and his soundtrack emphasizes heavy, intense electronic beats to get across his nature as an android and how precarious his job is as an investigator.
What is your function?
I am a broadcast operator.
State your model.
Model GB300. Serial number 336-445-581.
Were you present when the deviants broke in?
I do not remember.
Run a diagnostic.
All systems fully operational.
Have you been in contact with any other androids recently?
Only station androids in the normal course of my function.
Has anybody accessed your memory recently?
Not to my knowledge.
One of you saw the attack on the surveillance cameras and said nothing, which means there's a deviant in this room. And I'm going to find out which it is. You're going to be switched off. We're gonna search your memory and tear you apart piece by piece for analysis. You're going to be destroyed. Do you hear me? Destroyed! If you give yourself up, maybe I can convince the humans not to destroy you. Why should you all be destroyed if only one is deviant? Turn yourself in, or 2 innocent androids will be shut down because of you. Biocomponent 8451 regulates the heartbeat. Without this module, you'll shut down in exactly 63 seconds. I could put it back, but you just have to tell me the truth. Are you the deviant?
Stop it!
Nice shot, Connor.
I wanted it alive.
You saved human lives. You saved my life.
Ending this section off with the voice acting, as I don't want to continue repeating myself and saying that every facet of the game's presentation is masterful. It's all really good stuff, barring a few line reads. Brian DeChart, Jesse Williams, and Valerie Curry all do great with the material. It's just that the script is not particularly fantastic, and we have another standout performance by Clancy Brown. The only actor who I think flubs a little is Lance Henriksen during the Leo scene, but other than that, Bishop does pretty well for himself.
Too scared to fight back, you fucking bitch! That's right, I forgot you're not a real person, you're just a fucking piece of plastic!
Oh, Leo, leave him alone!
I'm gonna destroy you, then it'll just be me and my debt.
Leo. Oh my God. Leo. My little boy.
Carl,
They'll destroy you, Marcus. You gotta go. Get out of here.
Carl, I didn't mean to.
Get out! Now! Go! Marcus!
Don't fucking move!
The last thing I can say about the presentation is that there are some glitches, but they're rare. Detroit Become Human is a third-person choose-your-own-adventure game where some of the player's choices will have consequences later down the line. There are at least 3 characters to play as, but each are capable of doing the same thing, that being walking around in a predefined area, interacting with objects in said area, choosing dialogue or action options when they pop up, and dealing with QuickTime events. There is a difficulty selection of experienced or casual, which is odd for this type of game, and what it does is that it changes the QTE sequences to be a bit more forgiving or difficult and bars off some deaths for the player, like in the Hostage, but doesn't completely negate ones based on QTE failures or choices. If you're wondering, I played on the difficulty that I think David Cage intended this story to be played at, that being casual, because I shouldn't be blocked off from an interactive drama by my lack of skill when it comes to playing video games. Levels in Detroit are broken up into a few sections, that being exploration and action. Most of the game is made up of interconnected exploration scenes where the player is dumped into a fully explorable location and tasked with solving a set number of objectives. These can range from getting from one location to another, to interacting with a set number of characters or objects, to even passing time. The player is usually not on a time limit when it comes to set objectives besides the waiting ones in specific story beats, and sometimes optional tasks might be open for the player to do. Beelining towards objectives is usually the worst way to go about doing things, as not only do you miss out on certain events, but what I will call case-sensitive information. Not all choices matter in the long run for Detroit, but the ones that do will always cause a lock opening prompt to appear. What that means is that a new option is now available to the player when the time is right. An example for this would be when Connor is waiting for Hank. If he explores the officer's desk, Connor unlocks dialogue options that he can bring up to Hank when he finally appears in the station. Dialogue itself is a mixture of both exploration and action, as in the calmer moments or some route-altering choices, the player has infinite time to make a selection, while other times the player has a limited amount of time to choose what dialogue they want the characters to say. There are a few times where the player will have to do what is called reconstruct and pre-construct. Reconstruct. Most instances of Reconstruct begin when Connor has to scan a crime scene for evidence. Scanning does have two meanings to it, so I'll specify by saying crime scene scanning. During CSS, Connor observes an object to find points of interest to scan. Once all have been, he moves on to Reconstruct, where he recreates the event of the crime by using the triggers to fast forward or rewind to figure out how things panned out, usually to see where a hidden item is or where a deviant might have gone to. Pre-construct is when Marcus or Connor need a plan of action and thus they lay it out. It works just like Reconstruct, though the player is free to select an action path to see if it is the proper one. If it is, the player has to select another one until the full action sequence has been constructed. If it isn't, the player has to rewind and choose the other option. Action sequences are a bit more broken up, as they include both standard QTEs, where if the player fails, the character they are controlling might die, and simple button prompts for actions like the ones used in Exploration alongside selecting dialogue actions and participating in a few pre-constructions. Sometimes action sequences and Exploration are interspliced together, though most of the time the player just has to move the characters in a given direction and hit simple button prompts. Failing QTEs and picking certain actions in the story might lead to a character death, whether the player's or a side character. For the likes of Connor, dying isn't extremely detrimental due to his reincarnation, except during his endgame where death matters, though he does have to deal with lower instability, possibly missing out on options because he doesn't remember, or losing Hank. But for Kara and Marcus, their story completely changes. If Kara dies, her plot ends where she ate it. The game will never flash back to her unless the player reloads from the flowchart to retry. The only other character that can die in her story is Luther, making certain options impossible later on in her story. If Marcus dies, North will take his position as the leader of Jericho, causing events to play out unpredictably. Likewise, Marcus can also lose side characters, blocking off alternate choices in some scenarios, such as Simon taking the bullet for Marcus at the march, but Marcus can also be ousted from Jericho. There are no standard game overs, but I will say that a fair amount of the differing paths feel more like bad ends. An important aspect to remember is that some choices don't just have effects on one plot line. How Connor investigates the TV station if Simon is still alive determines if he will return back to Marcus or not later on in the plot. This is just one example, but do take note that characters do have a slight bit of crossover. The three key features within the game are the scanning ability, the flowchart system, and relationships. Anytime during an exploration scene, the player can hold down R2 to enter scanning mode. It tells the player what their objectives are, and on casual, highlights interactable objects. Be prepared to use this feature a lot, as it serves as a way to point you in the right direction. The flowchart system is this game's version of replaying chapters, but with a twist. Every time the player finishes a chapter, they are taken to the flowchart to see where their actions have taken them and what else they could have done. The player can also access the flowchart from the main menu, where they can replay chapters to see what else they could have done in an attempt to completely fill out the chart, or the pause menu. On the first playthrough, it is advised by the game and me that you don't replay chapters to get a different result, but after that, do whatever you want. When replaying a chapter, the player has an option to either save progress or not, providing a safety net in case you don't want your data overwritten. Each selectable action in the flowchart has two percentages connected to it: worldwide and friends. This shows how many people worldwide picked an action and how many people on your friends list picked an action. It can be kinda surprising to say the least. Filling out the flowchart awards spendable points that the player can use in the extras tab. The last major mechanic is the relationship system. It measures how side characters view the main character of the route. Raising and lowering the relationship score is all tied to dialogue and selectable actions. For all the characters, having high or low relationship scores unlocks or blocks off some case-sensitive choices and routes, but for Connor, he has to balance the additional mechanic of software instability. It measures how machine-like he is being. Save humans and androids, it goes up. Stick to the mission, it goes down. It too affects some case-sensitive choices. The absolute best facet of Detroit is Connor's storyline, solely because his considered good route covers all the topics Become Human wants to talk about in a pretty solid manner. Before I get to that though, I want to applaud both Brian DeChart and Clancy Brown for their performances they both give in the Deviant Path. I don't have to big up Clancy, as he's a world-renowned actor that will go down in history as one of the greats, but Brian DeChart, who is relatively unknown at the time of Detroit's creation and release, definitely earned his Golden Joystick Award for Best Performer as Connor. DeChart gives Connor not only an understated innocence, but a quick wit that makes every scene he is in enjoyable to watch. It helps that the best material was given to the two.
Before nothing.
Can I ask you a personal question, Lieutenant?
Do all androids ask so many personal questions, or is it just you?
Why are you so determined to kill yourself?
Some things I just can't forget. Whatever I do, they're always there, eating away at me. I don't have the guts to pull the trigger, so I kill myself a little every day. That's probably difficult for you to understand, huh, Connor? Nothing very rational about it.
We're not making any progress on this investigation. The Deviants have nothing in common. They're all different models, produced at different times, in different places.
Well, there must be some link.
What they have in common is this obsession with RA9. It's almost like some kind of myth. Something they invented that wasn't part of their original program.
Androids believing in God. Fuck, what's this world coming to?
You seem preoccupied, Lieutenant. Is it something to do with what happened back at the Eden Club?
Those two girls. They just wanted to be together. They really seemed in love.
They can simulate human emotions, but they're machines. And machines don't feel anything.
What about you, Connor? You look human, you sound human, but what are you really?
You know exactly what I am. In any case, I don't see how that's relevant to the investigation.
You could have shot those two girls, but you didn't. Why didn't you shoot Connor? Some scruple suddenly enter into your program?
No. I just decided not to shoot. That's all.
But are you afraid to die, Connor?
You shouldn't do that, Lieutenant. Destroying me at this point would deal a blow to the investigation, and have negative consequences for your personal situation.
What'll happen if I pull this trigger? Nothing? Oblivion? Android heaven?
I doubt there's a heaven for androids.
Having existential doubts, Connor? Sure you're not going deviant too?
I self-test regularly. I know what I am and what I am not. Where are you going?
To get drunker. I need to think.
There's the buddy cop angle, but also my favorite type of character consociation. The grumpy fuck and all smiles and rainbows. I don't know, man, there's just something about that character framework that I love no matter what the medium is or if the characters are platonic or romantic. It might have to do with the back and forth, as Connor and Hank in their whole scenario have a lot of it, but it's also because of how Connor drags Hank out of the emotional pit he's in. It's legitimately endearing seeing Hank go from a cold, unfeeling man who couldn't care about Connor to willingly putting himself on the department's shit list by cold clocking Perkins to buy Connor time to finish the investigation.
We could have solved this case. We just needed more time.
So you're going back to cyber life?
I have no choice. I'll be deactivated and analyzed to find out why I failed.
What if we're on the wrong side, Connor? What if we're fighting against people who just want to be free?
When the Deviants rise up, there will be chaos. We could have stopped it. But now it's too late.
When you refused to kill that android at Kamsky's place, you put yourself in her shoes. You showed empathy, Connor. Empathy's a human emotion.
I don't know why I did it. I know it hasn't always been easy, but I want you to know I really appreciated working with you. And that's not just my social relations program talking. I really mean that. At least, I think I do.
Well, well, here comes Perkins, that motherfucker. Sure don't waste any time at the FBI.
We can't give up. I know the answers and the evidence we collected. If Perkins takes it, it's all over.
There's no choice. You heard Fowler. We're off the case.
You've got to help me, Lieutenant. I need more time so I can find a lead in the evidence we collected. I know the solution is in there.
Listen, Connor.
If I don't solve this case, CyberLife will destroy me. 5 minutes. That's all I ask.
Key to the basement is on my desk. Get a move on. I can't distract him forever.
Perkins, you fucking cocksucker!
Returning back to my beginning point, Hank initially can't stand Connor, but unlike the other human characters in the story where that plot point is mostly put upon, for Hank it makes sense. As brought up in gameplay, Connor can die in a lot of the scenes that he's in, but his story doesn't end as a new Connor will take the old one's place, except at specific moments. Dying causes Hank to comment on Connor's lack of reaction to death, running that empathy line that is important to Hank's character. He doesn't actually hate androids, he hates how uncaring the world has become, and it just so happens that regular androids and Machine Connor only want to accomplish their tasks regardless if it means harming someone or not. Likewise, Connor doesn't understand the importance of his deaths as he knows he will always be brought right back to continue the investigation, but also bringing up another aspect of Hank's dislike of androids. Their inability to die. I wish the game didn't fully focus on the androids as a minority angle, as this part of android livelihoods is a perfect reason for someone to completely distrust them. They never die, not in the human sense of the word. An android can be beaten up, torn apart, or left to be scrapped, but all they need to recover is some spare parts and then they're back to normal. Humans don't have that luxury. A broken bone requires weeks to months of recovery. A drug addiction has to be handled with rehab and then with mental fortitude. An incurable illness is just that. When we die, we're gone. Imagine knowing that the inevitable hunter known as death doesn't go after a select population. Jealousy would be a common mindset, which would lead to resentment, which would lead to a much better alternative than what Detroit went with for its racism. So every time Connor dies, it reminds Hank a little bit more of Cole and how truly unfair the world is. It's a shame that this element of the story is completely skipped over if Connor never dies, which is a possibility. The playthrough I did was exactly that, and I genuinely wish that there was a moment in the story that forced Connor to die so this bit of dialogue could be brought up. It's such a central belief to Hank, and the game does a disservice to his character by making this information, in all regards, optional. You have to go out of your way to fail, an odd sentiment, especially when going for the good ending. Not dying does give its own unique scene where Hank confiscates Connor's coin, and if their relationship is high enough, Hank will attempt to do some coin tricks, which is pretty cute. But again, I wish the death scene was mandatory, as you can't have the scene where Hank talks about Cole and how Connor relates to him and the coin confiscation scene in the same run due to how Connor's memory works after death. Getting to story-specific moments, I love the scene where Connor has to guess Hank's password. It's so fitting that a character as downtrodden and technologically illiterate as Hank would make his password fucking password. And even though it is kind of a cheap pop, it gets me every time.
Obviously.
Likewise, Connor dragging Hank to the bathroom like an adult dealing with an unruly child is comedic both in a regular and dark sense. Hank had just tried committing suicide, but Connor's all chipper trying to get Hank back to acceptable levels of hungover so they can investigate a strip club. I could probably list all the moments where Connor's overall enthusiasm going against Hank's afflicted attitude as my favorite moments of the game, such as Connor talking about how he likes dogs or heavy metal, leaving Hank gobsmacked. All the moments that Connor's able to taste the evidence in front of Hank are great as well, but especially the one during the Eden scenario, mostly because if you time it properly, you can break Hank's line of thought in an extremely natural way. I don't know if it has anything to do with timing, but the way that Hank drops what he is saying to be disgusted over Connor really does paint how much it took Hank out of his thoughts.
He didn't die of a heart attack. He was strangled.
Yeah, I saw the bruising on the neck. Doesn't prove anything, though. Could have. Oh, hey! Oh, Connor, you're so disgusting. I think I'm gonna puke again.
I also do like the inclusion of Chloe as the proprietor of the main menu and do enjoy the surveys that she gives, mainly because I like taking surveys and seeing what everyone else picked. There is a bit of a run back to this though, as Chloe was popular enough that if you do decide to let her go, I did because thematically it makes sense and it serves as a nice capstone for what the story is trying to do, you can get her back through a menu option. For those of you who think I'm going to slam on the gameplay, sorry to disappoint you. For as much as I don't care about this style, it doesn't do anything structurally wrong. I mean, yeah, the gameplay is all QTEs and button prompts and is quite boring to the point that I'd much rather re-suffer the multitude of maladies infecting the drudgery known as Operation Raccoon City, as bad games can teach a lot about gameplay, but it would be like me complaining about aglets for being aglets. Just like the see-through shoestring sheath, the gameplay does what it needs to do and it's obvious that the story is in the spotlight. If anything, my one complaint for the game portion of Detroit are the touchpad prompts. They are the most finicky out of all of them, as sometimes they read without fail, sometimes I have to quit out of the action to reset the touchpad. It's as if David Cage and his team are trying to give a reason for the PlayStation 4's touchpad to exist, but by the time Detroit came out, every developer had already given up on it. What I will lay into are the story-specific moments, as there are some that are jarring to say the least, and the low importance of choice. I'm pretty sure it is impossible to discuss one of these games without going on a tirade about how choice ultimately doesn't matter. This statement rings true for this game, as for a number of events, whatever the player chooses has either little or no impact for following scenes. Take Marcus when he deals with Leo, or Kara when picking which hovel to hunker down in for the night. For a bit of characterization, the Leo scene goes a long way. For a story beat, man, it doesn't matter if Leo is shoved or Carl dies because that plot thread becomes unimportant the moment Marcus is revived. There are two different scenes depending on what Marcus chose, but both are pointless dialogue chapters, as by that time the game has shifted into prepping for the Battle of Detroit. Marcus doesn't even have a relationship score of Carl or Leo, so he's free to say whatever to the two with no repercussions. While those are still bad, they pale in comparison to Kara's chapter Fugitives. The objective for the level is to find some place to stay, the three places being an uncomfortable car that will hide Kara and Alice from the cops, a rundown house that is slightly uncomfortable but is better than the car and will still hide the two, and a motel that is the most comfortable but is conspicuous with a capital C. From a gameplay standpoint, the car or the rundown shack should be the better of the three options, as though you do take a hit to Alice's relationship that can be easily recovered in the following scenes, it theoretically means the cops won't find the runaway duo. That means while the motel greatly improves Alice's relationship, even though you have to steal twice, incurring 2 penalties with Alice that are unavoidable if you want to go down the motel route, theoretically it is the worst option, as the cops will immediately be on top of Kara and Alice. Word of the day is theoretically though, as no matter which option Kara goes with, she still has to avoid the cops in the following chapter. Why provide a player a choice and a criteria for making said choice if they are still forced to deal with the cops? This is just the tip of the iceberg, however, as a lot of Kara scenes have choices with minuscule or no impact. The standout chapter that captures this exact problem is Pirate's Cove, where no matter what the player does, the scene will play out exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you protect Alice, grab the gun or burning stick, or put out the fire, the attackers will still introduce themselves as Jerry and take Alice on the merry-go-round. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm being so uppity about choices that don't matter. Choice is an illusion in most games, they don't make a big deal out of that, but what makes me want to tear my hair out is that Detroit and other games like it try to present the case that no, there is no illusion. Everything you do and say will have consequence. But that just isn't the case. I don't like being lied to, and well, choice-based games / narratives have a tendency to do that. What I will say is that I'm at least not being completely pedantic, as I know having infinite possibilities in a game is downright impossible, and I wouldn't ask for that. Logistically, it would be near to impossible to make all the choices in a story matter. That's where I have the issue. A game like this is trying to profess that is the case. Seeing as I'm getting way into the game philosophy talk and not staying on topic, I'll transition to story-specific moments that I don't care for. I know I bigged up Connor in the good section, but if I had one complaint for a story that I haven't mentioned, as the Cole reveal is one of the more puzzling parts in his path, like, did Connor use CyberLife's database to name search Hank and Cole to learn about what happened, and if he did, when did he do this, and how did he get around what I'm going to assume CyberLife's stringent work policies as they only care about the bottom line? It would be the Eden scenario, fully because of how the tone flip-flops between horrific and comedic. I would enjoy Hank's complaints about having a hefty charge on his expense account if it didn't completely deflate the tension of trying to figure out where the Tracy suspect went. Not only that, Hank's comments also take the piss out of what David Cage is trying to promulgate about the treatment of sex workers. It is such an odd inclusion, and while it is in line with Hank to give out about bad things happening to him, it just kills the overall mood. Probably the other issue with Connor's story, though this one is also connected to Marcus, is the revelation regarding CyberLife's secret plan. Make no mistake, the main villain of the story is CyberLife, but you wouldn't know that because their plan only comes out of the bag in the last few minutes of the story, and the FBI/American government has co-opted the company's role in the plot. Androids having a conscience was due to Kamsky's design. He wants them to have empathy, and his test on Connor was to see if he could be trusted. He does take a neutral approach as he provides information on Jericho if Connor kills the Chloe, but it's clear he thinks machines are much more than what they are, as no matter what Connor does, Kamsky gives his word of advice about the back door, knowing that it will possibly disrupt what CyberLife wants to do. CyberLife is the photo-negative of Kamsky. They think machines are only machines and that deviancy is an error in the programming. That's why they sent Connor to investigate deviance so they could perfect their androids to remove that alleged glitch. That's a standard setup of evil company versus the original CEO. It works, well, in other stories it does, but it works. Here's how it gets fucky-wucky. CyberLife wanted Connor to become deviant, as then he'd be able to infiltrate Jericho without arousing suspicion, and they would be able to get Connor to assassinate Marcus via direct control. That's what almost happens during any ending where Connor becomes deviant, as CyberLife will either try to make Connor assassinate Marcus or end the rebellion if Connor has become the leader of Jericho. Big question. How? I thought the whole entire point of an android going deviant was that it breaks free of control. How is it possible for CyberLife to brainjack Connor if he has broken free of his programming? Better yet, why hasn't this brainjacking technology been installed in every single android? The only reason why Connor resists being taken over is due to Kamsky's words, but that opens up another can of worms. We know CyberLife used Kamsky's code to construct the Connor series, but that would also mean every other android has the code as well, because Kamsky's advice was about his programming in general. So CyberLife should be able to directly control any android besides Marcus. Either CyberLife had a slip of the mind and forgot it could control androids even if they've become deviant, or they wanted them to become deviant for profit? More surveillance? Generic evil motivation? You can see why the FBI/government takes up the villain space for most of the story, as CyberLife's motives can be unclear when you look at them as a whole. While you attempt to figure out that puzzle box, I'm going to complain that it's cold. I'm cold. So very cold. If I have to hear Alice complain that it's cold one more time, I'll wish for a Midwest winter on everyone. I'm pretty sure that line or a variant of it is said by Alice in almost every one of Kara's chapters, and it grows old so fast, much like everything else that comes out of her mouth. It is a sizable reason why I can't stand her character, as that makes up a good portion of her monumentally poor characterization. My other reason for hating the character I'm told to care for is that Alice is equal to a MacGuffin. Without Kara, what reason do we have to care about Alice? She doesn't do anything in the plot except get dragged around by her willfully ignorant caretaker. The entirety of Pirates Cove is the biggest example of this. In all actuality, Kara, Luther, and Alice could have reached Rose's house on that night, but because Kara is choosing to believe that Alice is human, they make a fruitless detour due to how delusional Kara is being. That whole angle, by the way, makes Kara the most frustrating character to control, not because she's believing a lie that she created herself, but because I don't buy her doing so in the amount of time she spent with Alice. We are told as soon as we play as her that her memories have been wiped. Whatever attachment that the old Kara had to Alice is gone, yet in the span of one afternoon, Kara grows so close to Alice as if the robot child imprinted on her. Also, why didn't Todd tell Kara that Alice is an android? I get that he's a scumbag and is also delusional, that might as well be the word of the day with the amount of times I'm using it, but wouldn't he hate that Kara is wasting ingredients to make a plate of spaghetti for something that can't eat it? Or is his mental faculty so overcome with guilt that he legitimately believes Alice is his flesh and blood daughter? However, that would go against what happens in the path where Todd is left alive, as he never mentions Alice during his TV interview, inferring that she is an illegal child android that would get him into hot water if anyone found out about it. And during the bus stop section of Battle for Detroit, he can get Kara and Alice killed by telling the soldiers that they are androids. And again, this calls into question how an android becomes deviant. Carlos's android needed multiple instances of abuse over the course of a few days before he defended himself, while Kara apparently only needed to be grabbed by Todd once and see Alice was in danger to become deviant. Either it's instantaneous, which discredits Carlos's android, or it happens over the span of a number of days, meaning that Kara wouldn't have become deviant. There are other aspects of Kara's story that aren't great either, such as Luther's role within the plot and his inability to say to Kara that Alice is a robot, like Rouge speaking to Omega about Shadow, but I didn't feel frustrated by them, probably because my expectations were low. That's what's weird about the good and bad sections of these videos, and why I think they are the hardest to write for, as merely okay or mild disappointment doesn't really measure as a blip on my radar. That does mean the links of good and bad can be sporadic, as I don't feel the need to make a big deal of something that only brought out slight enjoyment or aggravation. I reserve these two sections for any thoughts that I can't fit into the other sections, and honestly for Detroit, outside of the Connor levels, I'm struggling to remember what even happened. That's new for me. This was my second playthrough, which is about 1 to 2 weeks after my first, as even though I've forgotten in previous videos some information, that was mostly because it slipped my mind, not because it didn't leave an impact. This might be one of the weirdest sections of the video, and it's because I have two final thoughts for Detroit. As a solo recommendation, I can't in good faith say play Become Human. Connor's storyline is probably David Cage's best writing, especially when choosing to make Connor and Hank become friends. Brian DeChart and Clancy Brown have fantastic chemistry, and I wish the whole entire game was focused on the two, as Connor embodies the message that Detroit is trying to present. However, he's sandwiched between Kara, whose road trip plot could have been completely removed from the narrative with no repercussions, and Marcus, who carries the unfortunate honor of having to deal with the immersion-breaking imagery. Both also have some cringe-inducing writing, such as the non-reveal of Alice being an android and North falling in love with Marcus in the span of 3 days. It's also surprisingly forgettable, which is probably the worst thing I can say about anything ever. However, if you were to do what the best friends did, i.e. hold a 3-person get-together and play the game, I would recommend Detroit, stemming from the connective sinew tying the characters together. Do you three plan on working together to become human, or do personal matters weigh more?